It is Monday night. Actually, it's Tuesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in, gather around, behave yourselves, or not behave yourselves. You know the rules. We don't care if you behave yourselves or not, but be nice if you are contributing tonight or participating. Great to have you here. SpartanMag.com, if you're familiar with it, it is the source for Michigan State sports, has been on the internet since the beginning of the internet. We do things a little differently over there, analytical, try to be entertaining as well, but analytical first and foremost. Come on in, gather around. Sorry we were a little bit late. Hey, had to go do a couple things. If you need to know, is my daughter's cross-country team banquet. Had to check that out, came back, had to do some last-minute cramming to get the latest information for you about recruiting a little bit as we head into the recruiting season with signing day coming up on December 15th. Want to thank Jason Killip for all his help at SpartanMag.com, helping us with that. SpartanMag.com, if you're not familiar with it, it is the website covering Michigan State for Rivals.com. It's been that website for a number of years, since, like I said, the beginning of the internet, basically going back to the late 1990s. I've been your friendly cruise director over at SpartanMag.com for a long time. Paul Konerdijk doing a great job for many years, associate editor, SpartanMag.com. He'll be calling in. We'll be talking basketball with him about an hour from now. Hope to hear from Big Movie Ron Armstrong, talk a little football with him here real soon as well. We have questions that were posted over at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. Spartan Maggers from around the world have posted over there questions, and we will be fielding those questions tonight. Also put some questions over there in the chat area. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the Spartan Mag channel here, and go over to SpartanMag.com. If you're Spartan Mag curious, get over to SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber. Got a lot of new subscribers all the time over there, and we certainly appreciate each and every one of them. And some of those guys and girls that are subscribers, they don't always agree with me, but that's okay. We try to inform them. They can get their own opinions on things, and that's how we roll. Let's go right to the questions right now. We expect to hear from Ron here pretty soon. I'll keep my ears on for him to possibly be calling in here real soon. Keeping my ears on, that's a 70s term. Any guys remember that one? Yeah, I'm that old. All right, question number one comes from Spartan6674. Now, these guys, they've posted questions over at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com, mailbag style, and we field those questions here. The Underground Bunker message board, that's where Michigan State fans, Spartan Maggers, who are subscribers to SpartanMag.com, they go there and they talk Michigan State sports all the time. It is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. The daily narrative can be found at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. You can go check out SpartanMag.com right now. Great story from Paul Konerdijk about Michigan State basketball. After yesterday's press conference, I was at Michigan State's basketball practice yesterday. We'll talk a little bit more about that as Michigan State gets ready to play Louisville on Wednesday. By the time you're watching this, that game may have already completed or been completed. But Michigan State basketball coming out of the Battle for Atlantis tournament down in the Bahamas. Michigan State, of course, came second place, lost to defending national champion Baylor in the championship game, 75-58. That was a few days ago. I thought Michigan State looked excellent in the first half. Wore out a little bit. Credit to Baylor. They got some big, strong athletes who didn't wear out. But Michigan State, I mean, through the course of the season, you're not going to have another situation in which you're playing 3 games in 3 days unless you go to the Big Ten tournament and play 3 straight games. But it's not necessarily applicable to what's going to happen for the rest of the regular season and into the NCAA tournament. But Michigan State playing a very good UConn team. Interestingly, Tom Izzo saying that he thought that UConn is better than Kansas. Now, Kansas might be better at this point, although Kansas just lost to who just upset Kansas. I can't think who upset them. But the time Michigan State played Kansas 2 weeks ago in New York City, he thought that UConn was better, and then Baylor was better than UConn, of course. But UConn is the real deal. Michigan State survived that one 64-60, did some excellent things to get that win, did some excellent things to get that win against Loyola also. The thing you got to remember about 3 games in 3 days at this time of the year, Michigan State and all these other teams are still implementing what they're going to do. Michigan State is a very well-coached team, as you know. And I'm not sure there are many teams that benefit from a one-day prep more than Michigan State. You go down to the Bahamas, there is no one-day prep. It's 0-day prep. It's like a 2-hour prep for each one of these games. So some of the things that Baylor was doing coming out of the corner, some of the actions they were running, Michigan State would try to make corrections during timeouts and that type of thing. But normally that's something they've got a day to work on. And you didn't have it in that game, and Baylor didn't have it against Michigan State. But Baylor is quite far along in what they're doing right now, a top 5 team in the country. And we'll talk more about basketball here in a moment. But Question number 1 from Spartan6674, and he didn't say where he's from. People over the Underground Bunker message board, if you post, I want you to say where you're from. So if you didn't say where you're from, I'll say you're from Parts Unknown. Spartan6674 from Parts Unknown says, what stands out to me about recruiting with Mel Tucker's success and his new contract? All right, good question on that one. As far as the new contract goes, I've not seen... I'm not sure that resonates a lot right away as of now, other than the fact that it's kept his name in the news in a positive way, an impressive way. So that helps his cachet when he goes into those living rooms. And as far as recruiting goes, he's been busy this week, and I was talking to Jason Kilp about this earlier today, exchanging some texts and some information. Mel Tucker's on the road right now, seeing Caton Hauser, the quarterback. They've got a commitment from St. John Bosco Prep in California. His ranking has just escalated, having a very good season with a great team. He's a 4-star recruit, now became a 4-star recruit, I think, at the end of the summer. Now he's up to number 105 in the country. Great job by Michigan State getting in on him, making the evaluation, impressing him, getting a commitment from him. Now Mel Tucker's out there to see him at this point. I'm not sure if that's the in-home visit. Probably is. I've not detected that Michigan State has to hustle to hold anyone off in that recruitment. Would not surprise me if there's others that have shown some interest, but Mel Tucker's out there with Caton Hauser right now. And on Monday, Tucker and Ted Gilmore, the tight ends coach, were out in Arizona touching base with Michael Masunas, tight end, commitment for Michigan State. Had the in-home visit with him at that time. You may have seen some pictures on social media. The Masunas family very excited to have Tucker and Gilmore in their home. It looks like a nice, sunny, cactus-filled home and backyard out there in Arizona. Look pretty nice, especially this time of year. Although I'm not complaining about the weather. Not yet, anyway. It's fine around here. But elsewhere, 2023s, the 2022 class is close to being finished. The 2023s, the current juniors, that's where Mel Tucker's success this year at Michigan State, and like you said in that question, the impact of the contract, that's where that's going to start having an impact, is in the 2023 recruitment. And with the new contract, the high price of it is impressive. If you're a high school coach around the country and you see the commitment that Michigan State has made to its football coach and its football program, that catches the eye of high school football coaches around the country. Just kind of a nod of approval, a big one in some ways, but also it sends the signal that he's going to be at Michigan State for a long period of time. It's not going to be one of these deals where every single year you're wondering whether he's going to go to the NFL or go to this school or that college or whatever, which can hurt recruiting. That's not going to be an obstacle. The reciprocal might be the case now. A lot of good press around Mel Tucker. So Mel Tucker was down in Texas today. I was talking to Jason Killip about this, and Jason Killip, who does a great job recruiting anchor for SpartanMag.com. Jason reporting that Mel Tucker was down in Texas, seeing a number of recruits, including a guy by the name of Ryan Yates. He's a corner from Denton, Texas, Geyer High School, 4-star recruit, ranked the number 48 player in the country. Denton, Texas. Jason Killip spoke with him today, texted with Ryan Yates, and Yates is really excited about Mel Tucker and Michigan State. Jason Killip reporting that for SpartanMag.com. He says Michigan State's in his top 3. He told Jason Killip that right now there is not another coach that has made him feel like Tucker does. Talking about Ryan Yates, top 50 national corner from Texas. So you're asking me, with Michigan State's success and the contract with Tucker and all those things, what am I seeing that's different? That right there is different. When have you ever heard, if you followed Michigan State recruiting for a long time, when have you ever heard about Michigan State getting involved with a junior 4-star top 50 national player in Texas 12 months ahead of signing day? Never. Now, I know that recruiting is accelerated these days, that junior recruiting wasn't 10, 15 years ago what it is now. So it's a different game in some ways. But for Michigan State to go out there and recruit the best to begin with, Michigan State recruiting has always been recruit close to home first and then go further from home if you need to try to get a sleeper or something like that. With the occasional, going back 25 years, Cedric Irvin, a 4-star out of Florida, and some of those guys that they got out of Florida around that time, Gary Scott, Cedric, I've forgotten some of those names already. Matthias Askew was a big-timer under Bobby Williams, a 4-star out of Florida. Cedric Henry, Herb Haygood, those guys were 4-stars out of Florida a number of years ago.
Call from
Big Mo.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, let's go out to the phone lines right now, bring in our very special guest. Big Movie calling in. Ron Armstrong, card-carrying Spartan dog, former Michigan State football player, early 90s defensive back, good friend of mine, good friend of the program. It's great to have him spend some time with us. I was just taking a question about Michigan State recruiting a little bit. We'll move on from that and talk to Ron about Michigan State football. Michigan State finishing up a tremendous 10-2 football season, defeating the Penn State Nittany Lions 30-27 in snowy Spartan Stadium on Saturday. It was a great environment, great to witness that. Great to witness those young men finish their regular season the way they did and celebrate the way they did. I felt good for those young men and what they achieved that day and that season. Ron, your thoughts? Michigan State 10-2, got the win against Penn State. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, doing fantastic. Absolutely, man. I posted this on the message board that I hope to never get to a point, personally as a fan and as a fan base, that we frown at 10-2,
right?
Because it was a great year, not just a great year because of what folks expected of us going into the season, but man, you went out. Our team went out there 12 times and came away with 10 wins. I mean, that's a heck of a year, and they should definitely be proud of it. But what I'd like to do real quick, Comp, is just kind of back up, because you and I, we have conversations, in the off season, and we talk about things going into the season, and you and I talked about, how many new faces was coming into the program and how they were gonna, it was either gonna be a resounding success, or it could be kind of a, new guys versus guys who were here. And I think we ought to give the coaches, the players, and everybody in that program, our program, a nice, round of applause, man, for pulling it all together and pulling from the same side of the rope, because it's easy for that thing to go south. And I think maybe the early success we had helped, but at the same time, it's easy for there to be factions on teams when there's that many new guys in. So I think that was a great job by everybody involved, and you saw the results of a 10-2 season.
I agree. Bringing all those new players in, and something that stood out to me on Saturday, some of the comments from players, and Tucker talking about the players, is the team oriented environment, that players playing for one another, as Mel Tucker says, as some of the Michigan State players said about one another. And Tucker, I can't remember his exact quote, but it's something along the lines of will to win and toughness and mentality and all those things, but they were really selling the importance of the team this week and wanting to dig down and get it. I thought Penn State played real hard against Rutgers the week before. I thought after Penn State lost to Michigan, if Penn State was going to show, a little chink in the armor, maybe a little let up late in the season because their goals had dissipated, I thought that it might show itself in the Rutgers game. I know Rutgers is not great, but Penn State beat them 28-0, battled through the flu to do it. I was like, okay, wow, Franklin's got Penn State still playing hard. Give them credit for that. That was senior day at Penn State. I expected that level of Penn State to come in, and Penn State rallied and did some good things, but I think Michigan State came out hard early, took that 14-0 lead, and Michigan State's collective will on senior day at Spartan Stadium was impressive. And what Michigan State did on offense right out of the chute, and that 14-0 lead, of course, Penn State came back and tied it up, but Michigan State, there's always cliches about which team wants it more, and most Saturdays I think both teams usually want it equally, but in this game, in this situation, I thought Michigan State wanted it more, and that's an attribute to the players and the coaches, and that gets back to what you're talking about with the overall culture of this team, and it really resonated in Game 12, I thought, Ron. For
sure, and you could see it in some of those effort plays, in sometimes I know things will drive fans nuts, but because the play before where you got Brandon Wright just running that thing down, that's an effort play. That's a guy in week 12, week 13 getting a shot, and he's just, leaving it all out there. You saw, just guys making effort plays. But I'm going to give you the other side of the coin where it felt like Penn State won it out of this season. Man, they got the ball driving, and in one score, they get a touchdown. It's a 3-point, sometimes game, things will drive, and they're in no hurry.
What was
they played that last drive like?
What was the situation again? Repeat that again, please.
The score was 20 to 30, and they got the ball and they're driving, and they're not in hurry up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they snapped the ball one play with 1:48, and when they ran the next play, it was under 50 seconds left in the game.
Down 10. That
doesn't look like a team that's trying to go out there and win the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was definitely our guys were laying it all on the line, and Penn State's ready for the season to be over. It just but I think a lot of that had to do with our approach. Like our kids were fired up, getting after it, and I don't know, did you make it out to the? Yeah, you were there. I saw the VCast.
Mm-hmm.
That crowd, man, I was impressed.
Yeah.
With the weather and the holiday weekend, that was a great environment for a football game where folks could have easily stayed home.
That showed me something. That showed me something.
Absolutely.
I mean,
it should have showed everybody something. That wasn't your typical, it's a holiday weekend and the roads are bad. I can watch it on TV. Man, I want to be here and I want to see the last game this year in Spartan Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great crowd. The crowd was into it. Juiced up from the beginning to the end. I mean, it was a great environment, and our kids. You know what? And I'm glad because our kids earned that.
Mm-hmm.
They earned that send off.
Mm-hmm. It was, I think the announced attendance was something like 68,000, and I think that was close to accurate. I think the upper deck. The upper deck, I think, holds 5,000 on each side. I thought the lower deck was about 90% full, if not 95% full. So whatever the seating capacity is at Spartan Stadium these days, what is it, 75,000, 76,000?
75, I think it's 75,000, 80 or something like that. I think it's official.
I know it
changes.
And
I think some games they'll pump it up to maybe 78.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured if they would have said 70,000, I would have believed it. I mean that was a big turnout. And what was interesting, Cobb, is on our way in, because I don't live too far from the stadium, it wasn't a whole lot of traffic. So I'm like, it's going to be a low.
Right.
So basically, everybody that came up went to the game. There wasn't a ton of tailgaters.
Same. Yeah.
But everybody that came up went to the game and stayed for the most part. So it was a great crowd, great turnout, to cap off a really, really fantastic season. So, got a chance to, go to a bowl game, get an 11th win. I mean, just think about that when all the question marks last spring and, going through fall camp. And if we just flash back to a year ago this time and what the program looked like and, Tuck, those guys just finally getting to be around the guys with COVID and all that. And to be sitting here a year later at, 11-2 with a chance to go to a New Year's Day, New Year's Six Bowl, that's just remarkable.
Amazing. I thought that Michigan State could do well to go 6-6 this year. I thought there was an equal chance of 7-5 and 5-7. I thought 8-4 was the ceiling. I thought that Peyton Thorne could be pretty good. Had no idea Kenneth Walker was going to do what he did. Had a feeling that the offensive line could and should be pretty good, but especially early in the first half of the season and against the University of Michigan, the offensive line really answered the bell in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, Michigan in the Michigan game, I thought the offensive line hit its zenith. It did some great things that day. That TKO touchdown run by Kenneth Walker, his 5th touchdown of the day, when Michigan State had that new wrinkle that day against the Bear front with right tackle, A.J.R. Curry pulling inside into the A-gap, and he and Allen getting it done, and Jarvis getting it done, springing that one for 22 yards, whatever that was, TKO blow, new wrinkle, physicality, the screws tightened on that offensive line. Everything coming together in that offensive line. Unfortunately, that was the last time the offensive line played together in that regard because Jarrett Horst was gone. The week after that moved A.J.R. Curry over to left tackle, moved Jarvis out to right tackle, and they've been solid and good against Penn State here and there, but they were really gaining their stride against Michigan. And that was the last time that fivesome played together, Ron.
Yeah, I thought that group was starting to get into people. I mean, they were starting to move people. That second half against Michigan, I mean, that offensive line took over. And you're right. I mean, just think about that. I mean, you said that's the last game those guys played, that same group.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes those guys a while to get their communication down and know where, kind of get a feel for where they're going to be. And now you got to kick guys out. You went for playing left tackle or right tackle or guard. I mean, it takes time. And I thought, this past weekend, you saw some of those guys getting a little bit more comfortable playing, a different position than weeks past, and it looked better. But you're right, man. That group, had a chance to have it going, and hey, these things happen. Injuries are a part of it. I mean, you just got to keep playing through it. And I thought they did a good job of it.
Mm-hmm. One more salute to the fans on Saturday, over 60,000, 65,000. And I was in the press box up there, soft, how I am. And, coming out of the press box for the, to go down to the field to do the VCast and do some interviews and stuff, that coldness hit me like a wall when I went through that. I was like, man, these people, and I saw a lot of the fans in the concourse at that time, coming out of the stadium, having given their all for Michigan State that day. And you were there. You know how it was. People had snow on their shoulders. There were a lot of soaking wet coats. Even ski jackets. I mean, built for winter ski jackets had done their job and had become drenched. It wasn't just a snow; it was a wet snow, and it was cold. And people had snow all over them as they emerged from the stadium into the concourse to go out to the parking lot. They were all happy, but I was like, man, these people stuck it out. Michigan State fans, amazing that day, and loud, and had an impact. And some of the players, like Drew Beasley, said he had fun out there. Had fun out there. In the snow
was a lot of fun in the stands. I mean, it was for lack of a better term, it felt kind of festive in the stands. Like, people were in a great mood. Yeah. It was just, I don't know, it was just I think just having a chance to win 10 games, and I think that the last game in the stadium, and just an overall good feel about the season. Even when Penn State scored a couple of touchdowns, I didn't get the sense from the fans that there was this impending doom. It was just like, hey man, we're gonna the fans are we're just gonna keep chopping. I mean, you could see fans. Yeah. I think if I wonder if Coach Tucker, if somebody's brought this to his attention, or anyone's noticed it. But I was in the stands, and when Datsun scored the second touchdown, I saw fans making the keep chopping sign. Yeah. I saw fans doing that. Mm-hmm. Like, so when you talk about a culture taking hold, it's that same mentality is bleeding into the fan base that, hey man, the other team's going to make a play. Let's just keep chopping. And you saw fans doing that. I'm like, this is neat. It wasn't this, oh boy, here we go. It wasn't that at all. It was, somebody on our team is going to make a play. We're going to win this game. We're going to get to our 10th win. And you could just feel it in the stands.
Sure. It was impressive, and it was a memorable day to get to 10-2 and beat Penn State, beat Michigan in the same season, beat Miami. From beating Miami in 100-degree heat to beating Penn State in 27-degree temperatures with the snow flying like it was. And we've all been to Spartan Stadium at times when there's been snow flurries and once in a while when there's snow accumulation. But like Tom Izzo said last night during his radio show, in 37 years in East Lansing, he's never seen a game at Spartan Stadium in which it snowed from the beginning of the game until the end of the game, straight through. That was different. We've seen snow games at Spartan Stadium, flurries here and there. We've never seen a night game with that type of snow that I can remember. They've only been having night games around here sporadically since, 1987. And, on a regular, I know it's not a night game, but when it starts at 3:30 this time of year, it becomes a night game. That was just a different look. We've not seen Spartan Stadium look like that. And to see it look like that in a festive situation with the fans bringing it like that, and to finish off a season at 10-2, that was just something that those of us that follow Michigan State's football, whether it be in media or fans, did not bargain for when this season kicked off. That was an amazing present to the Michigan State fans at the end, and Michigan State's fans reciprocated.
For sure. And even the little light show they did with the snow. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the quarter where they had the lights flickering, and that looked really cool with the snow there. I mean, it was just, I stood there and I kind of just took it all in, like, man, this is really neat. I'm glad, because I'll be honest with you. I looked at the snow coming down. I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna make it over. My wife's like, we're going.
Wow.
So we throwing the snow pants and the base layer. I'm like, cops talking about base layers. So we're doing the base layer, the snow pants, and the parka, and we just went over and we got some hot chocolate. We sat in the stands and just took it all in, man. Like, and we weren't cold. I mean, it reminds me of one of my buddies who hunts all the time. He's like, it's not cold out. You're just not dressed for it.
Right. Right.
So
And
we weren't cold. I mean, it was wet, but we weren't cold.
Awesome. And you got some
And
snow.
it was a great time.
And we talk about rain pants. There's rain pants, and then there's snow pants, right? So you went with the snow pants, like ski pants, right? And then you're fine if you got snow pants, right? If you got snow pants, you're fine.
Man, I had on the Columbia, the Columbia Omni Heat snow pants. Those things are clutch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I had the base layer on under those. I was good. You know, the
Nice.
Sorel boots. Man, I came prepared for, 4 quarters of treachery out there, and we stuck it out. We left in the fourth quarter because the missus was ready to go,
mm-hmm.
and but which I'm kind of glad we did because the roads ended up getting pretty bad on our way home, and we don't live very far away.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a great time, man, and I'm really proud of the kids and the fans. That was a great showing, and just hearing the feedback and then seeing our kids play in the snow and throw snowballs and make snow angels. That part I was great. It was really cool to see because you see them on TV playing, and at times we just forget that they're still kids, man. Like, and for them to have a chance to just be kids out there and have some fun was neat.
It's great. It was like recess.
Yeah, they were playing and just smiling and having fun. But Amazing. I'll tell you this, hey man, not to change something really quickly, but I need the cold weather gear that Coach Tucker was wearing.
Yeah.
I don't know what he had on, but I need that. I need that stuff because he wasn't bundled up. He wasn't bundled up tough. Whatever he was wearing, I need that stuff.
He always has the latest and greatest, and
right.
And a lot of people comment on his attire from week to week, and that's a popular thing over the Underground Bunker message board. Is where can I get that shirt Tucker had? Whether it be a press conference or shoes or whatever, and he's pretty good at that stuff. Pretty good.
Yeah, whatever he was wearing, man, that's space age because, whatever he was wearing was kicking off enough heat to keep his head warm too. Because he didn't go with a hat, a beanie the entire day. So I need his attire.
Right. All right. So we're getting questions about, what's going on with Michigan State's pass defense and so forth. I just changed the background here. Didn't go through for me, but we'll go back to the Knight Stadium. All right. So, a lot of people want to know about Michigan State's pass defense, and you and I have talked about it a lot. In terms of the specific questions, we've got a guy by the name of Sea Rock City from Atlanta by way of Sanilac County, Michigan, the soybean capital of the world. He says something seems really wrong with Michigan State's pass defense. Where do you stand on the Jimmies and Joes or the X's and O's debate? I'll go ahead and go first. I mean, Michigan State's been working on it for a long time, and there's different ways that the question's been asked. I might want to mention some of these other questions that have been posted. Some of which I don't necessarily agree with, but I've lost I've lost my place. But anyway, Michigan State pass defense struggled again against Penn State, not unexpected, even in the snowy conditions. But Clifford in drier conditions, I think might have been up around 400, possibly ended up with 313 at the very end. Got a lot of numbers at the end when Michigan State was playing, a soft cover 4 with a 10-point lead. So he added 75 yards to his totals there at the end. But you saw what happened with, coverage bust when they cut the lead to 14-7. It looked like Kimbrough was over there playing cover 2 and everybody else was in cover 4. Safety didn't go over the top. So when it first happened, I didn't know if it's because the safety, he's supposed to have half the field on cover 2 halves and didn't get the entire half of the field, Angelo Gross, or if that would be cover 6 if you had cover 4 on one half of the field and cover 2 on the other side of the field. But as it turned out, Kimbrough was taken out of the game either late in the second quarter or in the second half and didn't go back in. Justin White went in. So I'm assuming that Kimbrough was the one that made the error on that one and not Gross, because we don't know for sure whether the call's cover 4 or cover 6. So I'm guessing it was cover 4 because Kimbrough played it like cover 2 and didn't have the lane all the way to the end zone. Wide open, touchdown. And we've seen too much of that out of Michigan State. We've seen it in the end of the second half of the season too often. First half of the season, you didn't see a lot of busts like that. Started creeping in a little bit more like the Purdue game. Brantley, freshman, had some mistakes in that game. Some, whether it be signals getting crossed or whatever. There were some times when he wasn't on the same page with his teammates. Okay, so that's going to happen once in a while, but it's happened a little bit too much. And of course, at Ohio State, we talked about it last week, some of the problems that Michigan State had there. Some of it was athletic. Some of it was, I went over it in depth a little bit in last week's Spartan Mag Live. But anyway, come out in this game, there was that one, and then the touchdown that tied it up at 14-14. You had Darius Snow on Datsun, the number 2 receiver, which was a new way for Michigan State to try to play it. Snow tried to put a heavy jam on him, and I'm not sure if I'm trying to remember in my mind where the safety was. It was Henderson, and he was over on the other side of the field, skewed toward the other side of the field, which was the 1 receiver side of the field instead of the 3 receiver side. An interesting deployment there because it was hard for him to get over and help cover for Snow. I would imagine Snow against Datsun, they probably would have wanted some safety help there. I don't know if that's a structural thing. I don't know if they wanted the safety more in the middle of the field over the ball or skewed over there to give up one-on-one to the other side. I'm not sure. That's the way they played it, and it didn't work really well on that play, 14-14, and it was after that play where we heard the sideline reporter from ABC say that Jacob Panashuk got into the defensive backs a little bit and told them they need to start playing better because it's week after week this is happening, to the point where Xavier Henderson said we're trying, and he took exception to that, and they had to be separated according to the sideline reporter for ABC. Anyway, around that time, Justin White goes in, and Michigan State's pass defense was passable in the second half for the most part. But Michigan State continued to have problems there. So the big question is it a lack of talent or lack of same-pageness? I'm in the camp of that's a quality control issue, that's a same-pageness issue, which if you're a coach and you're seeing it happen against Purdue with Chuck Brantley having some mistakes, whether it was signals or whatever, and then it happens again the following week with, and then this one with Penn State with assignment busts. At some point as a coach, you need to ask yourself, all right, what are we doing wrong that these guys aren't getting it? Are we putting too much mud on the wall? Not enough of it is sticking. At some point, that correction, you can get mad at the players for things like that, but you have to start looking internally to see what we are doing wrong as coaches. That's what I think coaches would do. Now, Tucker hasn't come out and said it that way, and we've not had a chance to talk to any defensive coaches in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but we can look into that as we get into spring practice and maybe talk with the coaches a little bit more about some of those things. But I'll let you talk here in a minute, Ron. But I'm just throwing some of my thoughts out there initially. Now, I think it was after the second touchdown, ABC's cameras caught Mel Tucker back behind the bench, grease board in hand, doing some coaching, and he was none too pleased. You could tell that he had had enough of it. That was my read on that situation. And I asked Mel Tucker about that after the game, and he didn't go into specifics about it. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but he didn't choose at that time to talk about specifically what went wrong and what needed to be done. He spoke more in general terms, the macro corrections and so forth. But I would just say that Michigan State made some great strides this year in a lot of ways, but until and unless they get that same pageness fixed in the defensive backfield, there's a limit to how good of a team and how good of a program you're going to be. And I imagine Tucker knows that, and I imagine he's on it. Ron, your thoughts?
There's a whole lot to unpack here, so I'll try to go point by point.
Okay.
The question that's been asked is it the talent or is it the scheme?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of ways, a couple of things, indicators that I'll look for to kind of help sort that out. And if you're playing man coverage, just say man coverage, and a guy's running wide open, more times than that, that's a talent technique issue. Because if you're playing man and the guy's wide open and he just beat the guy that was guarding him, so that's usually a good indicator that your guys can't cover these guys man to man. Either just they're not good enough for the technique. So that's more of a talent thing. If you're playing zone and guys are wide open and there's blown coverages, that's not a talent issue. Because it doesn't take talent to be where you're supposed to be in zone concepts. I guess you could say, the ability to pick up your concepts and know your assignment is a talent thing, but we're talking about just physical talent, the ability to get into, know your zone, know your concept, know your drops, read the route, be where you're supposed to be. Anybody can do that. So when you constantly see guys in the wrong spot, or he thought he had deep and he thought he had the flats and he went deep, or vice versa, you see these busts in the coverage, I don't think that's necessarily an indication that the guy can't play.
Mm-hmm.
It's something with the way it's being taught or his lack of understanding of where he's supposed to be. And when you see it happen with no matter who they put out there, no matter who's out there at corner, we're seeing the same thing. Or no matter who's out there, we're seeing the same thing. Something in the communication or how it's being communicated, there's a disconnect there that clearly, is needs to be addressed. I'm sure it will be, but I don't just to say it's the scheme or the talent. At this point, I don't know because you keep seeing the same things happen. Like for example, you can't possibly tell me that all week they're running scout team and they have the scout team guy playing Datsun in the slot and they think that they're going to play man and have Snow carry that thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's not a single Big Ten coach that would do that. They would say, "Hey, man, our hybrid guy can cover Datsun man to man." Do you know what I mean? So so something's off that's not getting executed that you got to address. I mean, and sometimes there's just things you can't address during the season, but it has to be addressed. And I'm pretty sure that it will be. But when you see it over and over, and you said that you didn't see a lot of it early in the season. Well, here's why. It wasn't on film that we couldn't cover these certain route combinations. But as soon as it got on film that we struggled with, any kind of really smash concepts or, some of the high-low stuff that we struggled with that or over route through our zones, man, we're going to see it every week.
And Michigan State changed up some of the way they matched up with those things. You remember the Michigan game, Michigan State played a little more man-to-man that day and resulted with Angelo Gross against number 1, the kid from East Lansing. I forget what's his name? Anyway.
Andrew Anthony.
Yeah, and Anthony. And Anthony and Sandra still both made plays against Gross in man-to-man, sometimes press from the slot area, and they really attacked Gross. After that, we didn't see Gross in the slot anymore. After that, it was more Henderson on the infrequent occasion, on the occasional occasion when Michigan State played man-to-man and had to put a safety on a slot receiver, it became Xavier Henderson for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And, they kind of did what they could with that, and Gross had deep middle on those situations, and he was still learning as he was going also. But in this game, like you said, when they tied it up 14-14, when Penn State did, it was Datsun, arguably the second-best receiver in the Big Ten, and then NFL guy, Darius Snow, who's had a really good season as a nickelback, a slot guy, closer to the box, thumper. And Darius Snow played all safety in the second half against Ohio State. Against Ohio State, they took Xavier Henderson out, had a little bit of a shoulder situation. So Darius Snow moves from nickel to safety, which was interesting, and continued to hit really hard and had a good second half. So in this game, on that one occasion, they had Snow against the number 2 receiver. Datsun, trips to the left, 3 receivers to the left. Number 2 receiver is the middle receiver, and Datsun was on him, and Gross was on the number 3 receiver, and a corner was on number 1, and a corner was on the single receiver out here to the field. And Henderson, as I mentioned earlier, you have 3 receivers to the left, and you've got Darius Snow against Datsun for the first time all year that Snow's been asked to cover a guy like that, to my knowledge, especially man-to-man. I can't think of another time, like you said. And Darius puts a stiff jam on him. I mean, Darius looks at him, and it looks like Darius knows he's got a tough situation here, and I'm sure Clifford looked at it and liked the matchup. So Darius put as hard of a jam on him as he could, and it didn't knock Datsun off his route that much, and it moved Snow back onto his heels a little bit, but now Datsun's on the loose all by himself, and Henderson can't get over there in time. So, like you said, during scout team, I doubt that they had Snow. They didn't go into that game thinking we're going to go with number 23 against number 5 in this game. It ended up that way,
right,
which smells of misalignment. Sometimes you hear about that on defense. We were misaligned. So not only did you have that matchup not advantageous, but also you saw where the safety was too. The safety was shaded over to the single receiver side. That didn't make sense either, right?
No, not at all. Now there's a couple of ways to defend 3-by-1. And I personally don't like defending 3-by-1 with a single high. Unless you're going to do this, if you're going to defend 3-by-1 with a single high, the single side is going to be man. He's going to, we would make what is called a yo-yo call. That means you're on your own. We're going to make a yo-yo over here. So the single corner side, you're by yourself. And the safety, the single high safety is going to line up. He's going to shade over to the trip side. Now, the reason why a lot of coaches don't like doing that is because you basically are giving up an over route to number 3. And we saw that happen, and I think that's probably what they were worried about a little bit, that we gave up that over route. I think Kyle Halladay was trying to carry an over route, and, he's not going to be able to carry the over route for number 3. So what I would like to do, let's see, is if you're in 3-by, you see a 3-by-1, you got to check to a 2-high look. You can't play that out of the single because now you got a deep safety on both sides of the field, so you're not giving up the over route, away from the 3 receiver side of number 3, and you got help to the trip side. You can't play that against single high unless you have like Trey Waynes and Darquez Denard and Drummond, and those guys probably can get away with it. But you saw Ohio State struggle with that last year trying to play that same concept. You can't do it, man. It's just there's too many bad things are going to happen when you try to play single high against 3-by-1.
Like you said, unless you've got great personnel or you got safeties that can run like a corner. You got to have Eddie Jacksons. There's always the superhero defensive backfield that probably could play any look you want to throw out there. Yeah.
But for the rest of the mortals, you got to go with the percentages. And honestly, I've been calling for us to play, what I call 35 all year. Look, man, we're especially against a team that they decided they're going to throw 40 times. Just go ahead and get in a 35 look, and that's 3 deep, 5 under with a 3-man front.
That's cover 3 deep zone, and then 5 man-to-man underneath, right? 5
under. Yep. 35 man, and
that's
we're going to rush the passer with 3.
Which is becoming common.
You're seeing 4-man look.
You're seeing more of those 3-man rushes in today's game, in today's football. That's what Ohio State. That's what Ohio State did against Purdue.
Right. Anybody who had any success against Purdue, they dropped 8. They played,
Wisconsin.
5 across, 3 deep. Right. And because the ball's coming out so quickly in some of these schemes that I think it was anything under 2.6, you can't get there. Isn't that the number?
Yes.
I remember if the ball was out in under 2.6 seconds, you can't get there. Like, it's just, you're not going to be able to get a sack. So you got to drop and make this guy hold the football. And if you look, like you said, throughout college football, you're starting to see coaches get off of this. We got to stop the run. Well, if a team wants to throw the ball 60 times, you having 4 D linemen and 3 linebackers or whatever, 2 line, that's not helping you any. And I thought once we started struggling with some of these concepts, just make it harder for these guys to have windows to throw the football in. And most quarterbacks, they don't see a ton. I mean, you're in scout team, you're not seeing a ton of work against an 8-man drop. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're not seeing a ton of that. You're seeing clear windows. You're not seeing a ton of, cloudy picture. And how many receivers really know how to get open in the second window, in the third window? How many of those guys practice that every day?
Mm-hmm.
It's something I thought I would have liked to seen us do. But back to that question, is it X's and O's or is it, Johnny's and Joe's? I think it's a little bit of both. I think we have to get guys who are a bit better physically that can run and a little bit tougher. One of the things I noticed is I don't recall us ever, even when we're playing man, I don't recall us ever jamming anybody. We're playing that catch coverage, catch man. I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like catch man. You
and I didn't talk about the Ohio State game here last week, but there was one of those plays where I think it might have been Kimbrough was in quote-unquote press coverage, but didn't get a jam on him, and the guy just ran through his tee. That might have been the first touchdown. I can't remember if it was Olave or who it was. And, those guys are drag racers anyway. It's hard to catch up with those guys anyway, especially in dry conditions. But that's what you're talking about there, right? Michigan State in that situation was playing some man-to-man press, I think, on that one. This is 2 weeks ago now. But didn't get a jam on him either. So you're pressing, but you're not really obstructing him, right? That's not the way it's been coached over the years.
I mean, it's, certain teams play, catch coverage where – But here's the thing. Even if you're playing catch, you're not usually pressing. The whole point of playing press is to be physical at the point. So I don't understand pressing and not being physical. Like I would need someone to explain to me the logic behind that. maybe you're worried about you guys whiffing and giving up a quick release. I don't know. I don't know what the logic behind playing press man and not disrupting the route at the snap of the football. I don't know.
Especially with
like you said,
especially with the way those guys run at Ohio State.
Absolutely.
If you're up
and,
there,
and then you have struggling safeties. You have safeties that are struggling getting deep. Man, last thing you want to do is give up a free release to a guy that's sub 4.4, and now now he's closing. He's hip to hip with the corner, and he's already gaining ground on the safety before the safety can get depth and read the play. I don't understand it, but I'm sure these things will get sorted out. Just there's just more questions. Like I said, there's a lot to unpack because it's almost been like whack-a-mole. When they had one thing kind of sorted out, another thing would creep up. So I'm sure we're not saying anything that Coach Tucker is not aware of and is unaware of, and I'm sure it'll get addressed. But it was just strange how just once it started happening, they couldn't get a handle on it.
What do you mean by catch coverage? What is that?
Okay, so when you're playing, if you watch, I saw Williams do it a couple of times on the snap of the ball. They don't move. They just kind of freeze and wait for the receiver to move.
Mm-hmm. And that could be
they're in their stance,
and that they could
they're
be
playing man.
Okay, in man. So you're not
in man.
And are you up pressing?
You're not jamming. You're not right up on the line of scrimmage. You're maybe 2 yards of depth, and you just squat and you settle.
Off man, and you could be,
but not quite. Not in the depth where it'll be off man, where you're 5 yards off, one inside. They're like a 2 yard buffer,
right?
Almost like a Canadian League.
Yeah,
in the Canadian League they got to have that buffer.
Yeah,
almost like Canadian League. Man.
And could be outside technique, inside technique, could be, but they could drop into zone out of that too, right? So it's maybe a disguise in that.
They could. I mean, maybe that's they're trying to disguise, but the alignment's going to give it away because you're not going to play. You're not going to play man from a head up leverage or outside leverage. So the second you're inside, it's a man look. And if you show any motion, they're going to chase the motion. So you're not fooling anybody if that's the the logic behind it.
Right. And Michigan State 10-2, great season, but the red flag there is being dead last in the country in pass defense. That's just alarming. I'm sure Mel Tucker has said stats are for losers, and he said that 2/3 of the way through the season, but the stats hadn't bottomed out yet. But we've seen Auburn, I think, win a national championship ranked number 95 in the country in pass defense. Notre Dame played for a national championship with a pass defense that was in the 70s or 80s. I mean, that can be done. If you're like stone cold stopping the run and teams are having to throw against you, usually you look at some of those teams like Notre Dame and Auburn, even though, going back within the last 10, 11 years with those teams, even though they were giving up a lot of yards per game, they weren't giving up a lot of yards per pass attempt, which we've talked about in the past.
Sure.
This year, Michigan State, dead last in the country in pass defense yardage allowed, still like number 9 or 10 in the Big Ten in yards allowed per pass attempt, which is not good, not where you want to be, but not as disastrous as that dead last in pass yardage seems. But, and that's a stat that I was talking about through the first 2/3 of the season, even going into the Michigan game. Then the Michigan game got a little ragged there when Michigan State tried to do some different things with man-to-man. Then it all really hit the fan against Purdue, and then, of course, against Ohio State. So the yards per pass attempt theory, numerical theory with some numerical evidence, was no longer holding water, in my opinion, as more mistakes happened later in the season. And, earlier in the year, Michigan State played more safer zone, like against Miami. Tucker doesn't want to be a bend but don't break defense, as he says. But that's principally what they were against the Hurricanes, and it worked really well. Held them to about 16 points down there, gave up a lot underneath, and hit hard. And it worked. And it worked against some other opponents also. And when you're playing that way, you are less likely to be blowing coverages, right? They were keeping things a little more simple. As they added things, I'm assuming they added more to their zone concepts too, because when we saw Brantley make that error against Purdue and then this error against Penn State, I guess it could be as simple as, are we playing cover 2 or cover 4? And they're mostly a cover 4 team in the last week or so as they tried to simplify things. But for whatever reason, Kimbrough thought it was cover 2 in that play. So even if you're not mixing it up a whole lot, at least that shows that they're trying to do more things, which might be leading to some of these problems. So Kimbrough sits, a guy with a lot of ability and potential, and he's had some good moments. Justin White goes in a tight situation in a very important game. He's been a nickel back for the last 1/3 of the season. Took that job, a dime back in passing situations. That was Emmanuel Flowers' role for most of the season. Justin White came along in the Michigan game, had a sack quarterback hit in one situation, had rarely played prior to that. He apparently is doing real well in practice, took over that job, took over that role, and eventually supplanted Emmanuel Flowers to become the dime back. And then in this situation becomes the starting corner for the second half against Penn State. Your thoughts on Justin White? Speedster at 5'9", but I guess they felt that he was a guy that would carry out what they were calling. Your thoughts on Justin White going in there, key situation, and getting it done?
Look, I said this. This is one of those things where something like that is extraordinarily important for your program, and here's why: because all in off season and the summer, coaches are constantly telling you, stay ready, prepare like you're going to play, stay ready, stay ready, stay ready. And when called upon, he was ready. And folks are like, well, he looked like a walk-on. Excuse me. The kid competes. It's clear that clear that he's going to go out there and compete. And you can win a lot of football games with a guy is going to be where he's supposed to be, and he's going to compete. I said the next step for him is just to finish the play. He had a chance for a couple pass breakups, or a pick, and he didn't make the play, but he was in the frame. He was where he was supposed to be. So that's a win. I mean, it wasn't a blown coverage. And you're getting that from a walk-on. So maybe it might be a situation where guys aren't following the scouting report or knowing where, their assignments. It might be some of that because he didn't seem to blow any coverages.
And he had an interception in garbage time against Ohio State, too. Those guys were still playing, and he made a play that day.
Where he was in phase. He was in phase on the, he was on the upfield hip, then cut underneath and made a play. So, maybe it's a situation where one guy's hungry and he's out there working his tail off, getting extra film and, understanding where he's supposed to be and is just doing his job because he looked prepared.
Yes. And
that's one of those things you can, as a program guy, you're like, hey man, look, this kid, all he did is came in and worked his tail off and he got major snaps, in a critical situation. That is, how you get other guys to start busting it and get in there and watch extra film and take notes and pay attention in the position meetings, even though you're the fifth corner, and it's September. You never know where the season's going to go, my man. Stay prepared. Stay ready. And you think Justin White's excited for bowl practice?
Yeah. Yeah. And his speed plays, too. What was the play? There was a busted play that he chased someone down fast, down to the left pylon, down the left sideline 2 or 3 games ago. Was it Ohio State? He chased somebody down. He had an angle, but he had to fly to make it happen. But, his speed plays also.
It shows up. Yeah, it shows up on film, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
And like that quarter when he blitzed against Michigan, had the quarterback hit that one time on an incompletion in the red zone, and there was no scouting report on whatever is White number 20 or number 30, I can't remember, but he comes into the slot 30. So 30 comes into the
30.
game. Michigan hasn't seen him on film all year, except maybe a little bit of mop up here and there. He's in the slot. What is this about? What is this about? Boom, he's blitzing. And he gets to the quarterback now and plants him incompletion. That was something, Michigan State was saving for Michigan a little bit, had a little unscouted look there. But that speed showed up, and he made a play there. So now you've got... So now go ahead.
But again, that's a guy staying ready and taking advantage of an opportunity. But to your point, he plays fast. And that's a signal of confidence too, of knowing where he's supposed to be, because there was no hesitation.
Oh, yeah. And, and that's a guy that Michigan State recruited as a walk-on, as a return specialist. I think he was a Californian. I think he played at Mesa State, came in as like a walk-on / maybe we got a scholarship for you type of guy. And he's, hasn't really done anything as a return man, but he's got on the field as a DB and making it happen. Now, so meanwhile, this week in the portal, Michigan State, Emmanuel Flowers hits the portal, lost that dime job to Justin White, and also Michael Dowell, who was the nickelback last year. Nickelback at the beginning of this year, lost that job to Darius Snow. He and Snow were playing kind of 50-50 into September, maybe early October, but Darius Snow went ahead and took over that job. And I tell you what, Dowell played the entire second half at nickel against Ohio State when Darius Snow moved to safety. That's the first time we'd seen Dowell in a while, and we'd gotten used to watching Darius Snow. And Dowell, good kid, tries hard, but he was more of you could just see he's more of a downstream tackler. He's not really, he's not really thumping like Snow was. I mean, Dowell will come up and he'll hit you the best he can, but there were times it just jumped out to me. I saw Dowell make a couple of tackles against Ohio State, and I was like, man, Snow would have gotten him 2 yards earlier. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but after getting used to what Snow does, I could see the drop-off there, and that all makes sense. So now Michigan State's getting ready for a bowl game, and you don't have your backup nickel, and you don't have a guy that had been your first DB off the bench in a dime situation, a pass situation. So Michigan State's depth in that defensive backfield going into the bowl game will not be great, but that happens to a lot of teams in bowl season. So I don't know if there's a chance we might finally see an A.J. Kirk. I don't know what's going on there. We don't know what's going on with Gravely, but Michigan State's a little bit thin there in that defensive backfield, and there's a chance they could get matched up with Ole Miss or something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking, I'm like, this would be one of those times where you hope there's a run heavy in Arkansas or a run heavy team that we could face.
A&M,
because if it's an Ole Miss,
play
an A&M,
A&M would be fine, right?
Right. Yeah, you want to see a run heavy team because we're going out there and we're seeing somebody that throws, that they want to throw the ball 50 times a game. I mean, that's not a favorable matchup for us, especially with with some of the depth issues we're having with injuries and things like that. But hey man, we still got to play the game. So
yeah.
But
I think Ole Miss is hoping for the sugar. If Alabama loses, I can't remember how it all shakes down, but Ole Miss is kind of hoping for the Sugar Bowl rather than the Fiesta Bowl. Sugar Bowl, Michigan State's not really being talked about for that one, but Ole Miss is the team that Michigan State wants to avoid in the bowl game. I think everybody can see that.
But and here's the thing. But you talked about this. You could even with the struggles in this secondary, we still found a way to win 10 games.
Yeah.
You know what that tells me?
What?
That tells me that if you have high-end players on either side of the ball that can outplay scheme, you can still beat people. Because Reed, how many contested touchdown or big catches did Reed make this year? How many plays that Kenneth Walker make, a big play out of that may not have necessarily been there?
Right.
So when you have high-end guys that can outplay scheme, you can still win a ton of games. In either side of the ball. If you just give, for example, leave our secondary the way it is, it give us Shalik Calhoun rushing the passer.
Yeah.
One guy that can outplay scheme, that can turn a bad play into a great play for you, and you can win a lot of ball games. You don't have to be great across the board if you got enough high-end guys that can impact the game.
And what if you have Shalik Calhoun and just a defensive backfield that's on the same page?
Now you go ahead and play regular base zone and let that guy hunt. And now all of a sudden the quarterback's getting off his spot a little bit, and the ball's, instead of feeling comfortable back there, he's trying to make the first, throwing the first read because he didn't know if he's going to have time to go through his progressions. These things impact each other. So, I mean, just get us a pass rusher, a high-end pass rusher, and suddenly those DBs don't look as bad. Suddenly the linebackers drops. They're not so concerned with, getting so much depth to help the safeties out that they're leaving, 16 yards between the face of the linebacker and the back of the D lineman.
Right. So what about? Go ahead.
It'll come. I mean, listen, we're saying all this, Comp, and if you think about this, Mel Tucker hadn't even been head coach a full 2 years.
Right.
I mean, so to have us at 10-2 with the patchwork, we're still putting this thing together. It's just, I mean, it's impressive.
It's crazy.
And I think it's been a great ride. I mean, you know what? And we talked about this earlier in the season, when the preseason write-ups came out and picked us last and 4.5 wins and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, how hard is it for any of those guys to say, hey, you know what? We don't know what Michigan State's going to look like.
Right.
You got 40 new guys on that team. Who knows?
Right.
That would have just been the most prudent thing to do. Instead, they go, oh, they're going to be terrible. I mean, I don't know if I would have went 10-2, but
right. But
come on, at least do a little bit of work.
I mean, Konendyke and I talked about this, and I think you mentioned it also. I think we all expected Michigan State to be improved, but I was not surprised that your rank and file media members from Iowa to Pennsylvania to Illinois to Indiana, it was just easy to put Michigan State last because you didn't know much about them. I understood that, and I thought Michigan State would be improved. What I didn't know was where Rutgers, Indiana, and Maryland would be, and I thought Michigan was going to go belly up this year. I thought it was done for Harbaugh this year. I'm very impressed that he saved that team because he lost that team last year. They quit against Wisconsin, and it's rare to see a college football team or any football team, once the coach loses the team, for them to ever recover. And they got out of the Iowa game last year. They got out of the Ohio State game last year. Otherwise, they would have went 2-7 or whatever it would have been, and they'd have gotten destroyed in those games. He might not have survived. I give him credit for righting that ship and doing it the old Stanford way, the way he did it in Stanford. Because it's clear that he was like, and I heard his father gave him this advice also. Hey, if you're going to go down, if you're going to get fired, go down with what you used to do, with what you used to know. And he kind of took over the offense and became physical, and it matched up well in a day and age when everybody else is going with 6 defensive backs and so forth, and they happen to catch Ohio State in Big Ten weather. And it all came together for them, and Michigan, credit to them. It's just their fans are having a victory lap this week, as they should and as they deserve. But those fans that are cooing and crowing this week, we've not heard from them all year. They've been afraid to come out all year. They're enjoying it right now, but they didn't enjoy the entire season. They were waiting for the nuclear fallout to come and hit them, and they've been ducking all year. Well, now they've had a good week this week. We'll see what they can do in Indianapolis, but they've not enjoyed the year like maybe they could have, should have, or would have if they hadn't had all the preseason hype leading into it, because nobody believed until about the third quarter of that game. So they've had a quarter and a half to celebrate it, so good for them. And they were good. They played good old-fashioned football. Credit to them.
I think there's a couple of things that look, I'm a football guy. And I dislike Michigan as much as anybody, but there's something that they do probably at a higher level than anybody in football. It is just, I mean, they're so good at it. I mean, and it probably goes completely unnoticed by the casual football fan.
What's that?
And I'm like, I wonder if anybody charted this, if there's a chart, if there's a stat for this. Man, their second and long play call gets them 6 to 8 yards every time.
Yeah.
It seems like. I mean, they'll go 2nd and 10, and it's 3rd and short.
With a run
They're
play?
so good on second down. With Michigan. If they go, they'll go first. They could go, 2nd and 10, right? They didn't get anything on first down.
Mm-hmm.
That 2nd and 10 play call, 2nd and long play call, they have been money at all year.
Get into 3rd and short, 3rd and manageable.
The 3rd and short, 3rd and manageable. And it's going to be.
Is it usually a run play or a pass play, or it could be either?
No, it is a H. I call them H delay, tight end delay. It's going to be an H or tight end delay, or RB delay, and it's just a 6-7 yard play.
Yeah.
And all they're trying to do is get the 3rd and manageable.
That's Bill Walsh theory. Bill Walsh was big on 2nd and 10, run the ball usually to set up 3rd and manageable. I mean, it's great in theory, right? But you're saying that they've been just awesome at that all year, huh?
They have been lights out at that. You rarely see them in 3rd and long. I mean, it's rare. Here's the thing behind that. I think that's where they were terrible in years past, that Harbaugh would go into these games with this game plan. And this is what he's going to do on first down. This is what he's going to do on second down. And regardless of how off of that. So there were so many times where they'd have a play call on first down and didn't get anything. And then because that play didn't get anything on first down, he's going to call again on second down. Now it's third and long with a quarterback not a particularly good passer. Next thing you know, you're playing.
Right.
This year, man, they went first down. Even if you stuffed them on first down, it was like that second and long play call was their trump card. And they were going to go with that. It didn't matter the formation. There's going to be some kind of window dressing to hide the tight end or the H or the little running back delay over the middle, and it's going to get them 6, 7, 8 yards. Now you're looking up. It's third and 4, third and 3, third and 2, and that's their comfort zone.
Interesting.
And every now and then on second down, they might hit you with a deep shot, but more times than not, that second down play call, they were money at.
All right, let's shift
and
gears.
If you think about this,
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I got Konadike calling in about basketball here in a minute. I got a question here from Carl from Canton, Georgia, and he says, "What does a Mel Tucker coached MSU national championship team look like, and how will we know the program is getting there?" So Carl from Canton, Georgia, going right for the jugular. He wants more. My answer to that would be, let's wait and see what Michigan looks like. Ohio State looked amazing, of course, against Michigan State, and I was starting to think, okay, is this one of those offenses like Alabama last year or LSU 2 years ago, where they just had too much offensive talent and they were going to outscore everybody? And maybe if Ohio State got on a dry track down there, maybe they could do something against Georgia's defense. But we saw Michigan beat them in the freezer phone booth on Saturday. Credit to them. We'll have to wait and see what Michigan does, how they can match up going forward, if they can beat Iowa, if they can get on the field with whoever's left there in the playoff. And whatever Michigan becomes now, Michigan State is not creating their program to emulate that, but
no.
If Michigan can do damage in the playoff, that would signal to me that Michigan State, that if you win the Big Ten, you can get in there and get it done, especially if Alabama is starting to lose some traction. Can Alabama bounce back and beat Georgia this weekend?
Make fights.
What's that?
Styles make fights, man.
Yeah.
It's not linear that, if you do this, it's just sometimes what you have is a particular weakness of your opponent.
Yes.
They just have really good D ends.
Mm-hmm.
And if your tackles are weak, you're going to struggle.
Yes.
Ohio State's tackles, weren't very good.
Yeah.
So conversely, they might go into a game where the team has great offensive tackles that can block those guys man to man. Now suddenly that defense doesn't look as good, and they can't get off the field.
Right.
So Styles makes fights.
Yes.
What does a Michigan State national championship team look like? It's real simple. We got a ton of guys that can win our individual matchups, like Coach Tucker talked about. If you look at that 13 team at Michigan State, we had a ton of guys that can go out and beat the guy in front of them. We don't have to look at Alabama. Just go look at that 13 team. Those dudes could go out and beat the guy in front of them pretty much every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
No matter who you put out there against that 13 team, they were going to win, beat the guy in front of them. That's what you have to have. So when Tucker said that, and how you throw his players under the bus, I didn't take it like that. I was like, at the end of the day, that's really what it is. You got to be able to beat the guy in front of you, not the call, that stuff's great.
Yeah.
But when the rubber hits the road, you got to be able to over time, because once there's film, you might have 5 to 7 unscouted looks per game. Mm-hmm. Everything else, they know what's coming.
Mm-hmm. And as far as Ohio State goes, when I wrote the pre-snap read prior to Michigan State versus Ohio State, I thought there was a path to victory for Michigan State there if you just looked at the Nebraska game and the Penn State game. Ron, I'm going to let you go. We're going to bring in Paul Konadike. I really appreciate your time, Ron. Okay?
Absolutely.
There he goes. Really appreciate it, Ron.
Call from
Paul Konadike.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press.
All right, let's go out to Lowell, Michigan. Good friend and great colleague, associate editor, SpartanMag. And going prior to that, associate editor, Spartan Magazine. Doing it all at SpartanMag.com, doing a great job for many years. Bring him in. We're going to talk a little basketball, a little football, some other things. Paul Konadike, how you doing, Paul?
I'm doing good.
All right, we just talked a lot of football there with Ron Armstrong. You and I are going to talk some basketball here in a moment. But first of all, before we go any further, Michigan State football coming off that great victory against Penn State over the weekend. Your main takeaways from Michigan State in that game and the regular season that Michigan State had?
Well, I think the biggest thing is resiliency. I think that states it all. And then playing up to the ceiling and beyond at times. I think you could argue that Michigan State should have beat Purdue, but I don't know if that's the case given where they were at the season injury wise. But I think every game that they should have won, they won. Mm-hmm. There's a couple games that they shouldn't have won that they found a way to win, and I think that those were hallmarks of some of D'Antonio's better teams when he was not when they were building it, but when they had it going. And I think Michigan State's done so many good things this year, and they've done it without the quality depth that we saw at the height of the D'Antonio era. And that to me is very impressive. The guys kind of continue to scrap, grind, and find ways to win, play for each other. And if that continues going forward, while Michigan State becomes more deeper, more talented, that's going to be Michigan State's going to be a handful for anybody in the Big Ten East.
That's certainly a great year for Michigan State football fans. An unexpected plus this year for Michigan State football to do what they did, no question about that. Michigan State basketball, 3 games down in the Bahamas last week, getting ready to play Louisville. By the time people watch this broadcast, the Louisville game may have already been played, so we're going to talk a little more big picture. But Michigan State, great job in the Bahamas, in my opinion. They beat UConn 64-60. They beat Loyola, a pretty good Loyola team, and did really well against Baylor before, running out of gas there and losing to a very good Baylor team, 75-58. Baylor, physical, athletic, skilled, all those things. But Michigan State grew last weekend. And I thought Michigan State was pretty good. I thought Michigan State could be a top 25 team. I thought Michigan State could be a team that could finish, 5th, 6th, 4th in the Big Ten. Coming out of that performance in the Bahamas, I think better than top 25. I think they can be a Sweet 16 or better team, and right now they're ranked number 22 in the country, and they deserve that. But Michigan State basketball grew last week, showed some things, but the ceiling of potential, there's still a lot to aspire to, and it's all adding up to what I'm expecting to be a really fun and exciting basketball season for Michigan State fans. Your thoughts about Michigan State basketball right now?
Yeah, I think Michigan State's basketball is trending way better than people anticipated coming into the season. I think we knew that there were a lot of quality pieces, but I also don't think that Michigan State hasn't had great point guard play, but the point guard play has been significantly better than it was last year. And I think you get disillusioned when you see really bad point guard play on a consistent basis, and you kind of lose perspective. Like last year we were talking about a bunch of different times about, it looks like Michigan State has good pieces. Now we can see, now that there's some quality point guard play, not great yet, but room for improvement, but decent point guard play, just kind of average. We can see how those pieces fit together. We couldn't see that last year, and I think Michigan State has a lot of good pieces. Some guys have some work to do to get to where they need to go, but there's other guys that are ahead of schedule and doing some really nice things. And I think Michigan State doesn't need a lot to happen to be a really, really good team. I think they're a good team right now, but I think they can be really good if they tighten up a few screws and they get guys playing, at maybe a little bit higher level than they are right now. But a lot of positive things for this early in the season.
Yeah, and Michigan State is starting to get some of those areas to come around for them. There's a lot of little things that are starting to be polished up. For instance, Gabe Brown rebounding in the Bahamas. Seeing Gabe Brown rebound, maybe not totally consistently all the time, but some rebounds from him that we've been waiting for a long time. That part of his game's coming around. Scored really well. I think it was the first half of the Baylor game. He was really hitting. And he's going to be a streak scorer. And if he's shooting well, it's hard to track that guy because he runs really well. He gets to his spot, and he's got a quick release, and he's 6'8". So if he's hot, you got a problem. Gabe Brown is growing as a player.
Let me just point out one area of growth. I was just looking at some of the stats from last year to this year. One of the things that we've seen, one of the things we were constantly talking about in podcasts last year in regard to Gabe Brown is, can he do something else besides shoot a three-pointer?
Right.
Can he get that one dribble pull-up
Absolutely.
stuff? Can he drive? Can he do some things? And we saw him try to do that at the end of last year, but now you're seeing it on a consistent basis. You're seeing the drive, the pull up, the mid range. And one stat that really stands out to me right now, when I look at Gabe Brown, he played 28 games last year. Mm-hmm. He played over 20 minutes a game, and he only took 17 free throws. Mm-hmm. The entire year ago. He's already taken 23. So that's an area. So he took 17 free throws in 28 games last year. This year he's already taken 23 in seven games, and that just kind of shows where he's going. And it hasn't just been against overmatched opponents. They played a really good schedule, and Gabe Brown has taken a lot of steps in the right direction, and he's one of many guys.
Yeah,
that fits that bill.
The in-between game, off the dribble, pull-up, jumpers, yeah, that was not part of his game in the past, and it is now, and that just helps the offense. I know there's a lot of people out there that say the medium range game, the analytics say you should never shoot from 17 feet. That's such bull crap. The in-between game is vital if the defense is good at getting out on you. Sometimes the three-pointer's not open. Sometimes there's 5 seconds left on the shot clock. Sometimes you're at 19 feet, they're out on you. You have to shot fake, one dribble, 16 foot, and go up there because that's where the shot window is. And for people to say, oh, that's a bad shot, he shouldn't shoot that. It's like, shut up, idiot, look at the shot clock. He's got to shoot that one. And if you've got the skill, you've got that club in your bag that you can go to that, like Gabe Brown has right now, it helps an offense. He's worked on his game. That part is there. That's good to see. Can he be a consistent guy? If he can, that'll help this team a lot. Now he's got to show that he can move his feet, and he's doing that a little bit better, but not a guy that's always had the best lateral movement. We'll be watching that a little bit more as we go. This guy, Locke, for Louisville, good catch and shoot guy. It'll be interesting to see if Michigan State puts Christie on him. And that's one question about this Michigan State basketball team, Paul, is, defense from top to bottom. At some point, you're going to need somebody that can play some lockdown defense, play some stopper defense when you play some of those all Big Ten small forward shooting guard types. And that's where the most talented offensive players usually are. Does Michigan State have a Charlie Bell type of defender? Somebody that Aaron Henry type of guy that can play some primary defense on somebody. I wanted to ask Izzo that after practice yesterday, and I talked to him a little bit about some things, but that particular thing slipped my mind. I want to ask him about that at some point. But going right to the chase, not necessarily a possible weakness, but not a strength, and a strength that you need to contend for big things at the end of the season. Michigan State, when they play a guy like Locke for Louisville, or James from Baylor, what do you see about Michigan State's defense and the cards that they have in their hand? What card can they play on a guy like that that's a 6'4" combustible scorer? What do you do on defense if you're Michigan State?
Well, I think eventually that guy's going to be Jaden Akins coming off the bench. He's going to be an elite defender, but that's coming up. And so I think the risk you run when you talk about Max Christie, he's still learning how to be a top of the a scouting report scorer. He's still learning how to play offense against grown men. And if you ask him to be that alpha male defender, and you're also asking him to learn how to get open on offense and that type of thing, that's a lot to ask of him at this stage in his career. The one thing that both Christie and Gabe Brown have, and Gabe Brown, I thought he moved better. I did think he moved better down in the Bahamas. I think he's starting to learn it a little bit, but he's not, like you said, he's not a gifted lateral mover. So that's an issue. But I do think both those guys have some length. And then with that, you've also got some rim protection from Marcus Bingham that maybe they didn't have last year. Yeah. But there is definitely an issue there for Michigan State to be an elite team. You got to be able to, and they're going to find that out in the Big Ten. Jaden Ivey from Purdue is as athletic as anybody in the country. He's a fantastic guard. Yes. And you're going to need a guy you're going to have to mix and match a little bit, but there's going to be times when Jaden Akins comes in and he has to be that guy. And then there's also going to be times I think that Michigan State can go to Tyson Walker. And they're going to go to Tyson Walker because I think he is the one guy that can move his feet and is quick enough. Now he's not tall, he's 6 foot, so guys could maybe score over him. But I think in some of those instances, if you have ultra quick guards, there's going to be some times where Michigan State goes 2-point guard. But Tyson Walker's fast enough. Maybe he's not quite as tall. Jaden Akins coming off the bench, he's going to be really valuable. But I don't know about either Max Christie and Gabe Brown being a high level defender. That said, I think Michigan State's better on defense than they were a year ago. There's no question about that in my mind, and the stats bear that out. Michigan State's holding teams under 30% from three and under 40% from the field, and they played a great schedule thus far. So there's no fool's gold in those numbers. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to have to get it done by as a team. And meanwhile, I think Marcus Bingham is playing great ball screen defense, and that helps out a ton. But then if we keep on going in this big picture things, we'll talk about, well, what are they going to do when Marcus Bingham wears down? Because that's another thing that Michigan State has to figure out a solution to.
Yeah, Marcus Bingham's ball screen defense, outstanding. I think the best Michigan State center I've ever seen do it, I think. I mean, he's got that great wingspan. He's 7 feet, and he moves his feet laterally, and he gets out on that thing, whether they want to feather it or jam it or trap it, whatever they're doing. He can move his feet, hedge help recover, get back to the rim while someone else tags his man for a moment, moving his feet laterally, giving a lot of energy there. And that's something I talked to Tom Izzo about yesterday in practice after his press briefing. Just he and I were talking a little bit. We're talking about Bingham and you like what you're saying, how he's worn down, and they're trying to manage that and, what kind of the fatigue level he has, the endurance that he's lacking that they've been working on. And Izzo's, he wants it to be more of a mental thing. He wants him to get over the mental hurdle. He thinks that is part of the problem for Bingham. And I was talking to Izzo, and I said, part of it, I said, Tom, you might not want to hear this, but Bingham is giving such great energy in ball screen defense more than your other centers ever have. So when he's moving, that 7-foot frame laterally, defensive slides out, hedge help recover back to the rim and doing it so well, he's burning fuel in ways differently than other big men have. And then you're asking him to in transition, rim run and sprint to the rim. And he said, yeah, you're right, And we've talked about that a little bit, and that's part of it. They still wanted to mentally get over it. But to your point, excellent in ball screen defense, and that taxes his tank a little bit. But they can do that because you got Marble coming off the bench. The tag team of those two guys, excellent. And Marble wants more and more playing time, and he's playing like he can earn it. And, Paul, I thought it was interesting in the Bahamas that end of the game, Loyola, Tyson Walker, ball screen, yo-yo, lob, Bingham, dunk for the game-winning play, right? Then against UConn, similar situation. And it was Hogard and Marble. Different point guard, different center, screen roll, layup, big play. Very interesting that end game situation, you can go to a different quarterback, different receiver. Not ideal, maybe, but that speaks to the growing skill level and functionality and poise that Michigan State is getting at those positions that did not exist last year.
Yeah, and that's key. Like we can talk about Hogard and Walker having all the turnovers and stuff like that. And I think that'll get sorted out a little bit. But the fact that they can actually run stuff and it's not just a point guard driving and then floating in with a one-hander that clanks out the rim. The fact that they're actually Tyson Walker is very, very good. In the half court in terms of his assists and like some of the shots that he's gotten for guys in the corner, whether it's Joey Hauser or some other guys. It's a shame. It's really a shame that those guys have shot so poorly. Whether it's Christie or whether it's Hauser or sometimes it's been Akins because he's been on the floor at times and he's 1 for 9 for 3. But it's a shame that those guys have shot so poorly because Walker has done such a heck of a job at getting those guys the ball. Meanwhile, he's 5 of 6 from 3-point range this season, which is something that was like, that's like something really, really quiet. So people are like wondering, well, when's the shooting going to come around? Guys like Hauser and Christie aren't doing it right now. Mm-hmm. But you look at a guy like Walker, he's shown that he can do it. 5 of 6. He's done it in the past at Northeastern, so I know he can do it again here. And then, you look at Malik Hall. He's 50% from 3-point range.
Yeah.
And, he's 6 of 12. So those are two guys that can really kind of help out a little bit. And maybe this team isn't going to be scoring kind of maybe exactly how we thought they were going to be scoring. Although there's no reason to give up on Max Christie. He's going to hit his fair share this year. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But I think that stretch 4, that's another big picture thing we can talk about later. But Malik Hall has quietly done some really, really good things. And I think definitely him in the starting lineup, I think he gives you a lot defensively and then just a little bit of offense as well. But I think Michigan State's been really good at defensively to start games, and I've been impressed with him. I think Michigan State is in a really good spot when Malik Hall is on the floor in the starting lineup.
And Malik Hall was so great against Loyola and then was quiet against UConn, but came on strong with big plays at the end, on offense, for the go-ahead or an insurance point bucket, I think, late. But then also late in the game when Michigan State switched on everybody, switched on a ball screen, and Hall ends up guarding a point guard and forces that air ball. that you've got a good defense when your stretch four can play some mismatched defense on the opponent. That's a plus. And Malik Hall, third leading scorer right now for Michigan State. I think right around 9 points a game. Doing some good things there at the 4 position. You mentioned that about Walker and Tyson Walker, 5 out of 6 from 3-point range. He's averaging 5.6 points per game. A guy that scored a lot at Northeastern. This is a new thing, a new level of opponent night in and night out. But you can just see that Walker wants to distribute and get everybody else involved. Being a good teammate, wants to set the table for others. Firstly, that's my take on that. But as the season goes along and he finds his own openings, that's going to be a source of offense that I think Michigan State can start to get more from him, especially that 3-point stroke. 5 out of 6, that bodes well. He's not going to stay, 80, 90% from 3-point range. Nobody does. But that there's some traction there. There's some resourcing there that Michigan State can do that they've not even tapped into yet, is the point guard scoring there with Tyson Walker.
Yeah, and then you look at it in a 2-point guard set type of deal where he can play off the ball and give them that. And, we've seen Michigan State try to do that last year with a guy like Foster Loyer, but he doesn't have, Foster Loyer was, he's a pretty good shooter, but he's not as quick, and he can't create his own shot the way Tyson Walker can. But yeah, I mean, Tyson Walker's in that he's trying to do the right thing right now. One of the things that I think he's really focusing on, and I think it's tough for him, is when you're at Michigan State, you got to jump off of 2 feet. You can't float. You can't do the runners that Rocket Watts used to always get away with, but that Izzo put up with. But that's something that's not going to work here. So there's certain types of shots that Tyson Walker was kind of bread and butter type stuff at Northeastern that he's really focused on not doing this year. So he's trying to he's trying to reprogram himself. At the same time, when you're trying to do that and you're trying to set up your teammates, it's a little bit difficult to juggle all of that. But the scoring, I think, will come, and I think that's going to benefit Michigan State, because if you're in a situation where you've got Tyson Walker on the floor with Jaden Akins, and who do you want shooting the ball there? You want Akins on the floor for his defense, but I'd rather see Tyson Walker shoot a contested jumper than see Akins at this point in his career. I think he will be a very good shooter moving, at some point. But teams want him open. He's 1 for 9 from 3, and they're going to dare him to shoot. And you want to see in those type of situations, you don't want Walker doing everything right just to get Akins the ball wide open in the corner when he's the best scorer on the floor at that point in the backcourt. So it'll be interesting to see how all these things work out. But we've seen this in the past with point guard as well. Michigan State puts more on a point guard's plate than any other school out there. That's why point guards want to play for Michigan State. At the same time, it's an awful lot to learn, and it's an awful big responsibility.
Yeah, and Izzo talking about the turnover problem. Everybody knows that that's a problem. But this is a team that can win if they get the turnovers down to 14 or 15 a game. 19 is a problem, of course, but they've had really good teams that have had 12, 13, 14 a game. I don't mean average per game, but they can win a game with 13 or 14. Of course, they're at their best when they only have 8 or 9 or 10. But the way Michigan State is trying to run, it just leads to some frenetic pace here and there that leads to some of that to a point. But right now, you've got Hogard and Walker each around three turnovers a game or something like that. I think I saw. That's got to come down. And when that does, I think those screws will get tightened. And you mentioned, sometimes you'll have Hogard and Walker on the court at the same time, and that presents some good things on offense for Walker to start to get his a little bit. But also, that gives you a chance to have Hogard match up on some of those wing offensive threats like we talked about earlier. I've not really decided what I think about Hogard on defense. I'm still getting used to what he looks like at his new body and his new frame. What do you think about Hogard guarding some 2 guards here and there for a few minutes each half?
I think Izzo wants it. I think Izzo wants Hogard's defense to be better than it is right now.
Yeah,
I think that's what he wants, because when he's talking about Hogard, basically says he needs to be better. And I think the 2 things that he's looking at is defensively, he wants him to play, Michigan State quality defense. And the other thing I think that Hogard needs to start doing is, I think the book is out on him in terms of what he can do and what he can't do. And some of the drives that he was able to get away with and kind of do a nice job against Kansas, you're not going to do that against UConn, and you're not going to do that against Baylor. So, I mean, Hogard needs to, and he's done a nice job setting teammates up in that type of thing. But he's got to know what he can and can't do. And I think the turnovers will come down if you got, with both Walker and Hogard, if you can kind of eliminate a couple of those, those offensive foul, or the unnecessary dribbling in traffic, just too much ball handling and trying to drive. I think that hurts both of those guys a little bit. I think Hogard is more likely to, kind of charge because he doesn't have the shot. I think Walker's kind of still floats a little bit sometimes, and I think that'll help him. And then I think sometimes Michigan State's committing turnovers from the point guard position when they're trying to feed the post. And I think sometimes, like when Bingham is posting, sometimes he doesn't post strong enough. I think they got to get that figured out. But a lot of this is just kind of a cohesion thing, and it'll take time. One of the things I think about with Tyson Walker, he's never had post players like he's got now. So it's kind of a feel thing that's still coming, and they played some long athletic bigs. So I think if they can kind of clean up on that kind of thing, they should be okay. I do wonder sometimes about, maybe the other area they could clean up turnovers is maybe Joey Hauser not dribbling the ball as much, in traffic. Maybe he handles the ball too much in general. But I think if everyone does a little bit better than they're doing right now, I think they'll be okay. But we've seen this before. We've seen them have high turnover counts against really good opponents earlier in the season, and then they kind of improve as the season goes on. They're always going to be in that. They're always going to be at risk of 15 turnovers a game because that's the way Michigan State plays. But they need to do a little bit better job than they are now. But I don't think it's a crisis situation.
Right. And before I let you go, Michigan State at the power forward position, Joey Hauser coming off the bench now, getting some open shots, missing them. Like Izzo said on Monday, he's got Hauser and Christie that have been missing some three-pointers lately. Especially Hauser with some open ones. And like Izzo said, if I ever get those two shooters shooting really well, we can be a really good team. So they're going to keep trotting Hauser out there. They're going to keep getting shots for him. And if they can get Hauser off the bench as a stretch four, that does help. I think Michigan State will keep investing minutes in him because the return on investment with him could be immense. Meanwhile, Hall is, of course, playing like a starter and a finisher, and he's a plus. He can play some three also. But Hauser, he's someone that a lot of fans love to critique and try to figure out where he fits in. I think Hauser, people are ripping on his defense, but I think Hauser moved his feet pretty well a few times in Bahamas. One time he got driven that I can think of. I didn't go back and chart it, but there were 2 or 3 times when teams tried to drive him, and he moved his feet real well and closed them off before they got to the rim. Did a pretty good job of that. Rebounded well. But the 27% shooting, this is a guy that shot, over 40% as a redshirt freshman at Marquette. He's got it in him, and they'll keep going to him. The good thing for him is he's not starting right now, and he'll start feeling some pressure, but it's not like it's different than like some players that have been starters. I think about Chris Hill and Adam Ballinger, guys that had senior slumps and just could not get their stroke figured out and eventually fell out of the playing group. Not completely out of the playing group, but fell out of the starting lineup, and their minutes became drastically reduced. With Hauser, he's already in a bench role, so maybe the pressure won't be quite as severe in that regard. It's not pressure yet. But your thoughts on Hauser, a former 40% three shooter, missing some open shots right now. What do you think? What's your gut tell you we're going to see out of Hauser here in the next 2 weeks?
Well, I think there is pressure on him. I think it's self-imposed pressure, and I think the difference between what he was at Marquette and what he is now is he wants to be a do-everything guy at Michigan State. He knew what he was at Marquette. He was a spot-up shooter. He was a three-point guy. Now I think he wants to put the ball on the floor. He wants to do a lot of different things. And before I rip on him, and I don't mean to be overly critical, but I agree with you. I thought Joey Hauser played some of the best defense that I've seen him play, given it was 3 games in 3 days as a Spartan. I thought he did well on the defensive end of the floor, in relation to his threshold to play defense. I thought he did some really good things. I think Joey Hauser kind of is his own worst enemy at times. I think sometimes, he just wants, you see, he wants to rebound the ball at the 4 and bring it up the floor. He wants to be a guy that can drive and score at the rim. I don't know about that version of Joey Hauser. I just don't. I think if he can accept the fact that he's a role player coming off the bench that plays a very important role. His role is to hit threes. Because when you look at some of the things that he's doing, he's shooting 27% from 3, but he's also shooting 35% from inside the arc, which isn't good. So some of the stuff he's doing inside isn't very good, and he's kind of turning the ball over at times. So I think if he can kind of take the pressure off and play his role, which is maybe hitting some jumpers, I think that would be good. The thing that kind of scares me about him is you can't really make the argument that you could make a year ago saying, hey, he doesn't have a point guard. He's not getting good shots. Last year, we'd see Hauser disappear for an entire game and maybe not even take, more than 5 shots a game. It's because he wasn't getting the ball in position to shoot. This year he is, and he's missing those. So I think that's a little bit concerning. Still a small sample size, so we'll see. I think he's a guy that works on his game nonstop. I think he will kind of work his way out of it. He's got a good-looking stroke. I think he can hit some open shots. I think he will, but I think he's got to kind of limit. I think he's got to change his idea of who he is and accept what he is, and kind of free himself from maybe some of the expectations that people had for him coming in of being a guy that's an NBA player, because he's not that, in my opinion.
And he's second on the team in rebounds at 6.8 rebounds per game at 21 minutes a game. So he's hitting the glass decently, pretty nicely.
Yeah, and I think I think rebounding is. And I want to go back just before we're finished with basketball and stuff like that. I think one of the things that I've noticed is that Michigan State is a pretty good rebounding team early in these games, and they're maybe not. They're not after Bingham starts getting tired. Mm-hmm. So there is value in a Joey Hauser rebounding at a high level. But earlier in the podcast, we were talking about the tandem that Michigan State has in Bingham and Marble, and I think Marble has to continue to play at a high level for Michigan State to be the team that I think it can be. But the one thing that we haven't talked about is what happens in the case of foul trouble. We know that Bingham can only play probably a max of 25 minutes a game at this point without significant diminishing returns. What happens if Marble can't give him a little bit in the second half? What if he gets in foul trouble? I think big picture wise for Michigan State to be a really, really good team, they need to invest minutes in Mady Sissoko, and he has to be a guy that can come in and bang and rebound. I'm not saying a ton of minutes a game, but he's got to be able to play 10 to 15 minutes a game, I think, if the circumstances warrant that. And I think that's something that'll help Michigan State. When you look at some of the teams out there in the Big Ten, watching Purdue tonight, the way they do it with Zach Edey in the first half, being the primary interior guy, and then Travion Williams coming off the bench. And I think Bingham, with some of his speed fade, kind of reminds me of what we've seen from Purdue over the years with some of their bigs. They start out like gangbusters, and they kind of fade a little bit as they get fatigued. I think Michigan State needs another guy out there beyond the small lineup that can go with Hall and Hauser at the 4 and 5 respectively. They need Mady Sissoko to be out there, a guy that can rebound, maybe play some defense, and I think that'll help them a little bit as Michigan State moves forward in the Big Ten play.
Stephen Leaf is a guy that's posted here on our podcast in the chat area, and he asked us about 8 minutes ago, what do we think of Sissoko? So I'm glad that you tackled that, because I was going to throw that out there. And it's hard to get him his minutes, though, because of that center position. You've only got 40 minutes to go around. And how many do you think Bingham can play?
It is, but you're going to have, when they start playing some of these overmatched teams, they're going to have to get him oiled up, because it's invariably going to be situations where there is foul trouble to Marble at Bingham, or there's going to be an injury or something where he has to play more minutes. And I know Michigan State can go with it, where they can go with Hall at the 4 and they can go with Hauser at the 5, but you can't do that too much. That's a good change of pace thing. It's not a good tactic to go with all the time.
Mm-hmm. But how many minutes can Bingham play, did you say, do you think?
25 maybe.
So if he plays 25 and you want Mady to get 10, that's 35 minutes. That's only 5 minutes for Marble.
Yeah.
That's the problem, because right now Marble's playing really well, and he's only averaging 13 minutes a game, and that's going to increase. That just speaks to how hard.
I'm not saying in every game. I'm saying right now. Not in these games right now. When they get an opportunity to play in minutes, when they get an opportunity to play against some of these really overmatched teams, they got to really hone in and get Marty up to speed so he can deliver in Big Ten play when he needs to. Yeah, when there is foul trouble.
I agree. You can't let him just rot away. And when you've seen Sissoko on the court in the last couple of games, it seems like he has regressed a little bit. He looks a little bit more awkward, maybe just because Marble and Bingham are improving and they're distancing themselves from him. But the numbers that I was throwing out there just illustrates how difficult it is to get all three of them minutes at one position, especially with Bingham playing well and Marble playing well. It's hard to get Matty in there. I agree that Sissoko, they're going to need something out of him at some point. It's just hard to get those minutes because Marble in that press conference in the Bahamas was kind of grouchy. He had that huge game against UConn, and kind of said it. He's kind of said he wants more minutes, type of thing. And Izzo liked it, but you can't blame him. Marble's playing pretty well, so it's hard to get those guys minutes. Kind of a good problem to have in some ways with Bingham and Marble playing pretty well, but it's not easy to find those minutes at the five.
Absolutely.
And last year was a big problem when Kithier was around. You had 6 guys at the 2 interior positions, and none of them improved. And that stunted development there. Don't have that problem this year. Nothing against Kithier, but 6 was too many scholarship players. That was a roster management error by Michigan State last year, but they did a good job to get in the tournament last year to keep that streak alive, and they're a good, lively team right now with a nice ceiling of potential. Purdue's looking really good as a top 5 team. Had that win against Villanova. Villanova's a top 6-7 team. Watching Villanova against UCLA, I thought they were just kind of okay.
I think Purdue's the best team in the country.
Do you? Okay. Wow.
I do. I mean,
who did they play tonight? What did they do tonight?
They killed Florida State 93-65. But so what we've seen with Purdue in a lot of years, I mean, they've got an elite guard in Jaden Ivey. They don't usually have a lottery pick type guy. They usually don't have a first round guard. Yeah. So they've got that. This year they've got 2 bigs. I mean, 2 really good bigs, and everybody came back for Purdue this year. So you got Sasha Stefanovic as a spot up shooter. You got that Newsom guy or whatever coming off the bench. You've got, Travion Williams is the best passing big. They just have. I mean, I'm used to seeing Purdue with 6 players that you can really do some damage with. And that they've got more pieces this year, and they've got more depth. It doesn't mean they're gonna win, but they can do it in a lot of different ways. And the fact that Ivey's able to hit threes like he is this year, in addition to playing above the rim, is really, really impressive to me. Mm-hmm. And I think they're a heck of a team. I think there's some good ones out there. But the one thing that impresses me and why I'm so high on Purdue is because I know that Purdue gets better. Yes. And I'm not used to seeing them play at this high a level this early in the season.
All right. Good
Maybe
point.
That's because of all the veteran guys, but, I like and then again, they were playing in Mackey tonight. So, maybe I can adjust for that, but I've seen them a few times this year, and I really like Jaden Ivey.
Sure. Yeah. And, Purdue's been close in the past. That year that Virginia won their national title in 2019 or whatever year that was, I mean, Purdue had them beat in the regional final. And it was a fluke free throw situation that caused – they might have been the best team in the country that year. That might have been Purdue's national title year. And then back, when Hummel and those guys –
this team is deeper, though.
Yeah. And back when Hummel and those guys were around, they kept getting injured. They were on the cusp back then. So they've been knocking on the door, and I think they're going to get one at some point. And their basketball fans will go crazy if that ever happened. I mean, when they beat Villanova a couple weeks ago, Caleb First, the freshman, Caleb First had a huge three-pointer. So they've got a freshman, at least one, making some noise for them as well. So Michigan State's going to be in the middle of the Big Ten fight, but Purdue setting the pace a little bit. But anything else, Paul? I'll let you go. I appreciate you chiming in. Anything else you want to throw in there?
No, I just think it's going to be fun to watch. This is going to be a fun year for Michigan State because these point guards are going to get better. Tyson Walker's going to get better. Max Christie is going to get a lot better. And to see Michigan State competing as well as they're competing this early in the season when not everybody is where they're going to be is really, really impressive to me. And I think I think these guys are a good group of guys, and I think they've got a good blend of old guys and young guys on this team, and it's going to be fun to watch these guys develop under Tom Izzo.
I agree 100%. There he is, Paul Konodike, Associate Editor, SpartanMag.com. So glad that we had him on Spartan Mag Live tonight. Paul, I'll see you over at Breslin Center tomorrow, Michigan State against Louisville. We'll talk about that and have coverage over at SpartanMag.com Thursday morning, Wednesday night, and through the week as we get into recruiting gear a little bit at SpartanMag.com. Thanks a lot, Paul.
All right, you got it. Take care.
There he goes. Certainly appreciate Paul Konodike and all the hard work that he does over at SpartanMag.com. Now, I got some homework I need to do here. I've got a lot of posts, a lot of questions. Let's go over to the chat area. Appreciate everybody that's been hanging out and posting and doing all kinds of things to support the show today. We really appreciate that. Rob South, first one to chime in. You had MJ saying hi. You got Sparty on 6686. You got Eric M. Then you got Gene Ridnour. Glad you made it on tonight, he says. So you got Rob South running the point. MJ, fittingly, the two-guard. Sparty on 6686 is the wing. We're going to put Eric M. at the 4, and we got Gene Ridnour down low, banging. Tim Hughes coming in from Traverse City. Good to see Tim Hughes. Matthew Johnson, first live in about a month. Good to be back. Jacob Terry says, go green from 166 Gunson Street. Jacob Terry, Gunson Street. Brings back some memories. Gunson Street. Good times. Gordon Tonona says, great Hallmark movie article. Appreciate that, Gordon. He's talking about a column that I did after the Penn State game over at SpartanMag.com. It's free. Go check it out. We had some fun with that. It was a great atmosphere. Nick Postuma checking in from Dayton, Ohio. ChrisMartinez.com are always incredible. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Thanks for being a SpartanMag.com subscriber. Appreciate that. And those of you that are not SpartanMag.com subscribers, give it a try. Heading into bowl season, signing day coming up in a couple of weeks. And, of course, what's shaping up to be an entertaining, interesting basketball season. It's going to be another good March for Michigan State fans, too, I think. Potentially. It's there. Might not have expected that. So you wrap it all up. Michigan State basketball can really do some great things. Preseason, not in the top 25. I think Michigan State's the type of team that can get out of the first weekend, get to the second weekend, then you're in the Sweet 16. And Izzo, if you can win in the Sweet 16, Izzo's usually really good in that regional final. Hard to beat. Hard to beat in the second game of tournaments as we've seen over the years. So what am I saying? I'm saying they can win in a regional final? Yes, I am. It's a long way away. I'm just saying potentially. They got a lot of screws that need to be tightened between then and now. It's possible. Dayton upset Kansas. Thanks a lot, Doors fan. Couldn't remember who it was that upset Kansas. Third live of the night, says Steve Smith 313. I don't know what that means. Matt Latham, big Michigan State hockey fan. Good to have him chiming in. Thank you, Matthew. He oversees the MUN message board over at SpartanMag.com. Michigan State hockey's won 4 in a row. They're going to Penn State this weekend, then Notre Dame the weekend after that. They'll be back home, I think, mid-December. Would it be Michigan Tech and Western Michigan, the Great Lakes Invitational? This year, it's no longer in Detroit. It's on campus sites now. It's not a tournament. It's just a showcase type of thing. It'd be interesting to see Michigan Tech back at MUN Ice Arena. I don't know the last time Tech played at MUN. That'll be interesting. But, Danton Cole said when, Michigan is just loaded. I mean, Michigan right now has more first-round draft choices in hockey than any college hockey team in history. Michigan State played Michigan a few weeks ago. Michigan won the first game decidedly. Second game was 3-2. And Danton Cole said in the third period of that game, Michigan State scored 2 goals, cut it to 3-2. And Cole said that Michigan State was doing some things in the third period. They played the way that they're going to need to play to win. Starting to do the things, the systems that they need to do to win, and that's carried over 4 straight wins since then. Michigan State was not expected to do a ton in hockey this year, but Danton Cole, they've won 4 straight, and we'll keep an eye on where they go from here. Can they go to Penn State after a week off and get something going out there? Anyway, DMC says, hey folks, Sparty Teacher here from D.C. at AJ Statue in the pick. Sparty Teacher is one of our great posters over at SpartanMag.com. History buff from Washington, D.C. Glad to have him here tonight. Big Will says, do you expect Tucker to make any staff changes? We're still learning about Mel Tucker. I mean, we knew what Mark D'Antonio was and that he wasn't keen on doing that. We're still learning about Tucker. We don't know. Do not know. So we were talking with Ron Armstrong earlier about defensive backfield situation. I mean, they've got problems there. We know Harlan Barnett's been great in the past. So we know he can do the job. So, they're going to, I would imagine, evaluate some things. Tucker was complimentary of Scott Hazelton after the Maryland game. But your guess is as good as mine, Big Will. Not sure. Nicholas Kasich says, Nick Kasich, senior at Michigan State from Chesaning, Michigan. What are our chances of flipping Keontae Goodwin? That's a football recruit. Those of you that don't know, Keontae Goodwin is a big-time offensive lineman from Indiana. And he's been committed to Kentucky for a long time. I had heard that Michigan State was in good position to get him about a month and a half ago, but then Alabama started coming after him real hot and heavy, and some others. So there's some SEC schools involved there, and you know how Alabama is when they want their man, they're really hard to beat. So with Goodwin, the good news on Goodwin is that he's planning to take an official visit to Michigan State just before signing day here in a couple of weeks. So Michigan State gets to bat last. It's my understanding that Mel Tucker and Chris Kapilovic are going to be meeting with Goodwin this Friday in home visit. So Michigan State is packing some good late artillery in the recruitment of Goodwin, and they want him badly. It's going to be an interesting litmus test. And wouldn't that be something if Michigan State can flip him and beat Alabama for a big-time Midwestern offensive tackle? And he is a mammoth individual. So we learn as we go with Mel Tucker. It's hard to put, in the past, whether it be Izzo or D'Antonio, you kind of knew what was their kind of party and what they were going to do and what they were going to be and what type of recruits they could get, what type of recruits they couldn't get. With Mel Tucker, we are still learning, and we don't know. I'll believe it when I see it, but Michigan State's going full throttle here at the end. Angelo Gross, Harold Joyner enthusiast, says, what have you heard about Juwan Gibbs and however you spell his name? Supposedly, Bama is the front runner. He's talking about the running back from Georgia Tech, big timer. Done some good things at Georgia Tech. He's in the portal now. Michigan State is interested. They just got Jalen Berger out of the portal. What would that do in terms of Michigan State's interest in Jahmyr Gibbs? I don't know. But, Michigan State's got room maybe for one more running back. They're still looking for one in the recruiting class here, but if they could bring in two, last year they went to the portal and they got Joyner and Kenneth Walker. And, of course, Kenneth Walker ended up being great. They've already got Jalen Berger. Could they go after Gibbs and bring in a great one? Yeah, if they could get him, they would. Alabama likes him. That's what they're saying. Alabama likes him. And Alabama's, how Alabama is. I mean, if they're going after somebody in the portal, could be hard to beat. Kid from Georgia. Could Michigan State get that one going? We learn as we go with Tucker. I have my doubts on being able to get him, but Michigan State is reaching out. Raymond Sebastian says, I think will be in the top 20 recruiting class if we land all 5 recruits. We got a good recruiting slots, wide receivers. We got it. Looks like up to 5 transfers coming in. DBs should be better. I kind of lost the strain of thought on that one. I apologize. All right. Spunky181 says, why would Dowell enter the portal now and not after the bowl game? There's a lot of players entering the portal right now, so it's kind of like musical chairs. If you start too late, there might not be a chair for you. So the earlier you go, the better it is for you. But it's not great for the team right now, but it's understandable. It's a business decision. Steve Smith 313 says, will the new $7.5 million in new contracts for assistants be used for any immediate changes? A lot of people are asking about that, about changes. And I don't know. That's not something Tucker's going to hint about or share with anybody. But he said in the past that he was going to evaluate everybody on a daily basis. And there's more money there. So if something were to happen, they've got more to spend. Nick Postuma says, what does Big Mooby mean? I don't know. That's Big Mooby's, Big Ron Armstrong. His handle over at SpartanMag.com in the Underground Bunker is Big Mooby. That's what he posts under. That was his nickname from back in the old days. That's what we continue to call him. Big Will says Tucker definitely was Coach of the Year. He did a phenomenal job. Mel Tucker, Big Ten Coach of the Year, named earlier today. Congratulations to him for that. Well-deserved. Steve Smith 313 says, Spartan Mag Ron is an amazing guest. Thanks for providing the back and forth discussion. All right, Jim, can you ask Ron what he thinks of the problem? Secondary from. All right, I'm going to go back over here to the mailbag area. We're getting kind of late. Let's see what we got here. We already talked about what's standing out with Tucker's success in recruiting with his new contract. And I mentioned the example of the 2023, the top 50 corner from Texas, that Ryan Yates, that from Denton, Texas, that Tucker has had an audience with earlier today, and Tucker's making an impact with him. That's different. That's just one player, but that's what Tucker is. He's going big. He's going big. Also in recruiting, when you talk about, well, let's see. We've got some other questions here. All right, who stands? I'm jumping around here a little bit. All right, here we go. Macklin JB from Rochester, Michigan says, who are the 4 incoming high school recruits that you think Michigan State fans should be the most excited about? All right, I haven't looked at all the senior film of all these guys yet, so I'm going to withhold final judgment on a lot of these guys, but I'll be looking into them more, a little bit more here in the coming days as we get closer to signing day. Looking at them, I think Jaden Mangum is a very interesting one. Jaden Mangum out of Birmingham Groves at 6'3", 185, a guy that can hit. He's got ball skills. So at safety, he's interesting. Alex Van Summeren is a defensive lineman. He plays at a smaller classification for Essexville Garber. In the T-shirt camps, he has remarkable quickness off the ball. So I'll be eager to see what he looks like in pads at the college level. That's an interesting one to watch long term. Michigan State needs help at tight end, and Jack Nickel coming in from Milton, Georgia, I think he might be, it's hard for a true freshman to be game ready at the tight end position. Between Nickel and Masunis, the tight end from Chandler, Arizona, Masunis is a little bit bigger. There are opportunities there for the tight ends to help. And I'll be wondering whether Tyler Hunt might come back for a 6th year to use that COVID year. I think Michigan State could use him. Connor Hayward, of course, is moving on. Gillison has never really rounded out into a lot, so they need help at tight end. These 2 freshmen, one of those guys I would think should be able to help. I'm not sure who it is yet. Again, I've not looked at their senior film yet. Caton Hauser, the quarterback from St. John Bosco Prep, big-timer, playmaker. Of course, Peyton Thorne has the job right now, so Hauser would be a guy for down the road. But a good one to have there. The offensive linemen they're bringing in, I think, are interesting. Braden Miller, all these guys. Lepo, Brocious from Arizona. But, probably more down the road type of guys. Terrell Henry, the wide receiver from Roseville, I think he was the first commitment in this class. Looked good early on. And then went out this summer and turned in some big plays at some of the camps and followed up with a mammoth senior season. Playmaker, physical, excellent hands, burst, playmaking ability. Terrell Henry is a guy that's grown as a prospect since he committed to Michigan State. So, you look at some of the DBs are interesting with Ade Willie from Bradenton IMG, Malik Spencer out of Beaufort, Georgia, Carter, the defensive back from Georgia, also. Dylan Tatum, the 4-star from West Bloomfield. Dylan Tatum, a lot of burst, a lot of ball skills. Not sure about him on defense. I was talking about that before last week. But you're asking me for 4 guys. I'm going to shelf that question. I got to look at some more senior film to see the latest on those guys. Thanks for the question, though. Lift. This is Alan from East Bay on Houghton Lake. Houghton Lake. Sounds good. I wonder if the ice is formed yet. I wonder if there's any ice fishing going on up there yet. Houghton Lake's a great place. There's great cross-country skiing around there, too. He says, would like to take this question one step further. Is our past defense the issue of Jimmy's and Joe's or X's and O's or too many cooks in the kitchen? That's his question. I would say, a little bit of all 3. And we tackled that question with Ron Big Movie Armstrong earlier in depth. And, I boil it down to some quality control that needs to be fixed, and they know that, and I'd imagine that they're on it. So it's got to get better. I don't think it's all Jimmys and Joes. I mean, Tucker says they need to recruit better. I don't disagree with that. He's going to keep shooting for the fences, swinging for the fences for recruiting. So, they got Kimbrough, Ronald Williams. Those guys are pretty good, I think. Ronald Williams, I think he's played well here at the end of the season. But Tucker's going to, those guys are solid, I think, for next year and so forth. But for the years ahead, Tucker's going to be going for big-timers. We'll see what happens. So that's what Tucker's talking about, winning one-on-ones with recruiting once you get the coaching, the learning and the process, the Nick Saban process. He wants to be operating with more horsepower there, and I think that will happen. I think they will recruit high. But I don't think it can all be solved with recruits. They got to get on the same page. I don't care who the recruits are, what the talent is. You got to be on the same page, and they've got some guys that haven't been on the same page. So they're on it. We'll see what happens long term. But it's not great. Not great. Alan from Houghton Lake also says, if I can squeeze in a B question, he says, recruiting. I love to see Tucker hitting the South and focusing more on Georgia than Florida. He says, but where is our Ohio presence? Harlan Barnett is supposed to be a recruiting rock star, and Ohio is his home territory, yet it's been very unimpressive results the last few years in terms of Ohio recruiting. With Ohio State and Michigan being more national, I would think this would continue to be a hotbed for Michigan State. What are your thoughts? Good question. As far as Ohio goes, you're right. They've not been as busy in Ohio. Now they're going national. They're going further away from campus than Michigan State has done in the past, but still there's good players in Ohio. Compared to the nation, Ohio is not as great with football recruiting as it was comparatively 20 years ago, 25 years ago, certainly 40 years ago. But, of course, Michigan State's 2013 Rose Bowl team that finished top 5 in the country was real heavy in Ohio recruiting. D'Antonio did a really good job going into Ohio and getting 3 stars and making hay with those guys. No question Michigan State can go into Ohio and do well. But you're right, we've not seen them be as busy thus far. There have been a couple. Michigan State is still in on Alex Afari, corner from Lakota West. He's a 4-star, ranked number 12 in Ohio. Harlan Barnett's working him. He's committed to Kentucky, been committed to Kentucky for a long time, and Michigan State's still working it. And I appreciate Jason Killip for providing some information about recruiting. We're going to have Jason on here soon. We're going to get a recruiting podcast going. But, I was talking to Jason about this today in terms of 2023 recruiting. Jason says there's another guy from Lakota West that Michigan State's in on, a 6'3" athlete named Malik Hartford. And also Ryan Coretta's an offensive lineman from Columbus St. Charles. He's visited Michigan State a lot. He's a 3-star, ranked number 11 in Ohio, 2023. So there's some others, but you're right. In the past, you could look for Michigan State to bring in 7 or 8 Ohio guys, and it's not the case anymore. It's a different way of doing things, but I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's different. And I agree with you that you'd think that there are some players there that Michigan State could make some hay with. And Michigan State, they've run into some, Kentucky has been a thorn in the side for Michigan State recruiting in the state of Ohio in the end era of the D'Antonio era. Now, be interesting to see if Mark Stoops is still at Kentucky after all the coaching musical chairs are done. Clinkscale left Kentucky. That's going to hurt their recruiting. Kentucky's recruiting in Detroit. But I don't know. We'll see Michigan State's recruiting pretty well right now without relying on Ohio. Could they bolster things with a little more Ohio spice, a little more Ohio meat and potatoes? I would think so. Tucker's an Ohio guy, but they're just going where the players are and where they see them. So that's got to be an evaluation thing. They think, they're getting players elsewhere. They offensive linemen from Arizona. When you fill an offensive line recruiting slot with an Arizona guy, they're combing the country looking for players. That might have, in other years, might have been some 3-star Ohio guy. We'll see how it turns out long term. Spefton from East Lansing says, glad to see the questions above regarding our pass defense, which is our greatest weakness this year. He says, I thought one huge improvement over the previous era was in special teams. He says, beyond the kickers and punters, I thought our blocking and coverage schemes dramatically improved. Was this due to Jimmy's and Joe's, or was there a schematic improvement, or perhaps combination? End of the question. I would say a combination. You know, last year Michigan State had, 2 punts blocked? They had 2 punts returned for touchdowns. That was not good. This year didn't happen. Punt coverage was good this year. Kickoff coverage pretty good. I think Penn State might have had one last weekend out to the 40 or so. Meanwhile, Michigan State had 2 punt returns for touchdowns, including one against Penn State or against Nebraska, which won the game. And that was all scheme on that one, right? Because Michigan State with a little trickeration on that one with a twin safety deep, and whoever was deep, was it Naylor, acted like he was going to catch it, but punter kicked it the wrong way. Jaden Reed took it back for a touchdown. Pivotal moment in that game, pivotal moment in the season as Michigan State followed up the big win at Miami with stealing that victory against Nebraska. Special teams had everything to do with it. Bryce Behringer, of course, punted really well this year, and coverage was pretty good. There weren't many times when he outpunted the coverage. Coverage was pretty good. So that did improve. Jimmy's and Joe's had something to do with it because Jaden Reed is the real deal as a return man, right? But protection was good, pretty good this year. Although there was it the Indiana game when they got a piece of a punt once? So not perfect, but good observation. Amos53 says, who is going to opt out of the bowl game? Opt out of the bowl game. You know, Kenneth Walker III was asked about that after the Penn State game, and he says as of now he's planning to play the bowl game. But he seemed to be kind of guarded about information about next year in bowl game. Would not shock me if Kenneth Walker opts out of the bowl game. Even at 10-2, even with the possibility of playing a New Year's Six bowl. I mean, he came to Michigan State as a business decision. Honestly, the smart thing to do would be to sit it out and just play in the Senior Bowl or something like that. Financially, I hate to say it, but that's the world. That'd be disappointing because I think Michigan State, whether they play in the Fiesta Bowl or the Peach Bowl, it's going to be a warm, fast track. And I think he would have a chance to do some big things on a national stage one more time, fully healthy. I think he could improve his draft stock with a real good bowl game by a few slots. But you also run the risk of an injury. So I would not judge him either way. He says, who else do you see leaving via the portal or NFL? Portal, nothing surprises me. Not surprised with Flowers, and I am a little surprised with Flowers because he was still in the playing group, but maybe he wants to go somewhere where he can start. I can see that. And not surprised with Michael Dowell entering the portal. You lose a starting job, it happens, right? Credit to Noah Harvey for not going into the portal, and he's played here at the end of the year, and they've needed him. I think Harvey has another COVID year if he wants it. Would he want to go somewhere else where he can start, or would he want to come back here and compete a little bit more? That's a good question. I've not heard anything, and I don't want to give anyone any ideas, but it's not like we're going to give anyone ideas. These players know the portal exists. I would wonder about Jordan Simmons, the guy that was number 1 running back last year, was surpassed this year. Now Elijah Collins is back in there. Did not see Simmons last weekend. Not sure if he had the flu or what. Did a good job as a freshman 2 years ago. Not really sure. But, yeah, there'll be other people in the portal. I don't know who it's going to be, but there'll be others. Some of those you can kind of see coming. Others, it can be a surprise. You know, you look at offensive linemen who are in their 3rd or 4th year who haven't had a chance yet. You wonder if they might be looking elsewhere. I don't know. But Michigan State's going to be graduating a lot of offensive linemen. So there will be opportunities for next year. 5 State from GR, Grand Rapids, Michigan says, what coaching moves so far have put recruits back in play for Michigan State? Like which players? What is the single coaching change by another school that would be most beneficial to Michigan State from a recruiting perspective? The coaching changes so far, I mean, Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame is interesting. Would that open up some of those recruits for Michigan State? Maybe for a minute, but like by the end of the week, if they hire Luke Fickell, which I don't see, I think they're going to let Luke Fickell coach into the playoff? Or do you talk to Fickell? And Fickell, I mean, that's a tough situation for Fickell. I mean, he's done so well at Cincinnati to lift that team on the cusp of a playoff. You know, does Cincinnati play Houston this week? Watch out, man. Careful with that one. I mean, if Cincinnati loses to Houston, that solves a lot of problems there. Fickell will go straight to Notre Dame. I'm guessing. Don't know. But Oklahoma, with Lincoln Riley moving on, I don't see Michigan State getting involved with any of those. I've not seen any indication that Michigan State would get in on or have a chance to get in on any of the Oklahoma guys. And that's pretty much the two movers right now. In terms of coaches moving on, I don't see a big impact at this point. If Stoops leaves, Kentucky, but I mean, I don't know where he would go right now. LSU's filled. For now, the carousel has stopped, but you never know when that carousel is going to open back up again, the musical chairs. 5 State from Grand Rapids says, what are my thoughts on Jalen Berger's game? Any inside word on his departure from Wisconsin? Jalen Berger, end of the question. Jalen Berger, the running back, Badgers, in the portal, committed to transferring to Michigan State yesterday. Pretty good running back, 4-star out of New Jersey, was a big-time national top 100. Had a decently promising freshman year last year. This year was third string, didn't get many carries, didn't do a whole lot, jumped in the portal. His film, I think his film looks okay. Decent speed, decent moves, decent power. See a little more speed on some of the outside zone work that he does once in a while. A little bit of make you miss, not a ton. I don't know. So inside word on what went on in Wisconsin. He was moving down in the depth chart from what I understand. Didn't like it, didn't appreciate it. Might have been late to a couple meetings. Then he didn't play against one of the early season games. And can't remember what, let's see. The Notre Dame game just got a couple of carries. I just wrote it yesterday for a story at SpartanMag.com, but I can't remember which game he sat out. I think it was maybe the season opener against Penn State. I don't think he played. But there were some discipline things there, nothing with the law or anything, but just towing the line after he was dropping the depth chart, I think was a problem there. Not a great sign. I'm not going to lie to you. Not a great sign. And 5 State from Grand Rapids says, rank the following running backs in terms of who you would like to add to the roster next year. He mentions Berger, Andrew Paul, Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is the Georgia Tech guy. Damari Alston's involved with Auburn. Audric Estime from Notre Dame. I think Estime didn't get much play for Notre Dame this year. I didn't see the play. I didn't see the highlights, but I think he had a few good highlights for the Irish this year. I might lean toward Estime. They recruited him last year. He had some interesting posts on Twitter, social media, now that Kelly's gone, about what's next type of thing. People wondering, is he going back to New Jersey? Is he staying? Don't know, but that's an interesting one. That'd be my answer, I think, for now. For the one that I would prefer. But I can't say, well, no, I'd prefer Gibbs. Gibbs is more established. He's amazing. He'd be the guy if I had to pick. Mahon5 says, in the beginning of the season, you said if Coach Tucker reached X amount of wins, he would be a quote, bad man, unquote, after the season. Do you care to expound on that statement and how it relates to today? I think that, end of question. Thanks, Mahon5. That relates to what I was talking about earlier with Michigan State, the recruiting they're doing right now, especially in the 2023 class. Nothing is done, of course. These guys haven't signed. These guys are juniors, but you're seeing Michigan State, starting to resonate with some of these recruits. They've been in on Armani Winfield for a while. Courtney Hawkins, I think, went down to see him this week. 6'2", 185, 4-star wide receiver from Louisville, Texas. Ranked number 188 in the country. That's national top 250 guy, number 31 in Texas. And Michigan State's been in on him for a while. But with Michigan State winning X amount of games, this year being 10, and the Longhorns not doing so well, I think they're getting Armani Winfield. that right there. You go down to Texas, get a 4-star recruit, flip a guy from the Longhorns. That's what I'm talking about, Willis. As for others, hanging in there against Alabama for Goodwin out of Indiana when he's committed to Kentucky, having the good season this year has an impact on that. Yates, we talked about Yates earlier. He's a 4-star. He's a junior though, but Michigan State's got a good audience with him. And then there's some others when you look at the 2023s that Michigan State's visiting this weekend. Offensive lineman Kapilovic's going to see a guy named Olas Alainen, 6'7", 310, from the Loomis Chaffee School, Windsor, Connecticut, 4-star, number 120 in the country. We'll see. Chase Besantis, Don Bosco Prep in New Jersey, 4-star, number 41 in the country, 6'5", 290. Michigan State having an audience with him. You'll have more of an audience with these guys when you've got a 10-2 record. And Tucker intrigued some of these recruits. They're right in there with some of these guys. 2023 running back Dalen Smothers, Charlotte, North Carolina, 4-star, number 225. Will Piegler spending some time with him. Another running back, Kedrick Rescano, 6 feet, 190, New Caney, Texas, 4-star, number 143 in the country. So you got Michigan State going to different parts of the country, hitting up these 4-stars and having an audience with them. Now, that's just the beginning. You got to get them to visit. You got to get a commitment. You got to get them to sign. So it's just the beginning of the road with a lot of these guys. So, yeah, I think he's going to be a bad man on the recruiting trail. I think he's going to get after it. I think he knows now he's going to be coaching at Michigan State long term. I think it turns up the wick in recruiting, so we'll see what Mel Tucker does. It's going to be fun to watch. Spartan Forever for Parts Unknown says, any chance Michigan State can get a New Year's 6 game with an Iowa victory? What bowl do you think Michigan State ends up with an Iowa win as opposed to a Michigan win? Well, if Michigan wins, Michigan's in the playoff. Ohio State goes to the Rose Bowl. Michigan State becomes the number 3 in the Big Ten. And they'll get slotted into either the Peach Bowl or the Fiesta. But I'm not sure if 2 Big Ten teams will go to both of those. I'm not sure. If Iowa wins, then I don't know who goes to the Rose Bowl, either Michigan or Ohio State, probably Michigan. Then Ohio State gets bounced to the Fiesta. Could Michigan State then stay in the Peach Bowl? I don't know if Michigan State is guaranteed one or the other. I'm really not sure. And I've talked to some sources about that, but I have not heard anything concrete. And I've not checked some of the latest bowl forecasts. And the College Football Playoff Committee decides all those matchups. So it's not like I think they decided they decide the New Year's 6, right? So it's not like those are Chamber of Commerce decisions. I'm not sure. I don't know. If you're Michigan State, you'd like Fiesta Bowl or Peach Bowl. You don't want to get bounced to Florida. I mean, Florida's good. Outback Bowl, that's great. But when you have one of these rare chances to go to a New Year's 6 bowl, Michigan State's never played in the Fiesta Bowl. So that'd be interesting. Peach Bowl is a Johnny-come-lately in terms of being a major bowl, but it is a major bowl now with the new stadium. They've done a great job with that bowl game over the years. Back in the 80s, it was just kind of a middling bowl. I remember when the Astro Blue Bonnet Bowl was a bigger bowl than the Peach Bowl. Gator Bowl was a bigger bowl than the Peach Bowl. Much bigger back then. But the Peach Bowl is really... They had some good matchups, ACC versus SEC, when when Fulton County Stadium closed down and they built whatever that dome used to be called, the Georgia Dome. That's when the Peach Bowl gradually started increasing in scope. And then the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, they were able to get in there and become one of the contracted New Year's 6 bowls. And they've done it. So good to them. Good for them. That's what Perlis always wanted to do at the Motor City Bowl. He thought that it could climb. Never really happened. I can see why, but anyway. Tony in Detroit says, hey, Comp, how much of an impact do you expect Berger to have in 2022? It seems like it will be a running back by committee next year. Do you think he could be the best of the bunch? End of the question. Impact, I don't know. When I look at him, he needs to improve. I don't see anything in him right now that's better than what Elijah Collins was in 2019. And maybe Berger can become better. Berger's high school film was pretty good. He was ranked real high. But I don't know. Maybe, I think Kenneth Walker III improved as an athlete after he got to Michigan State with Michigan State's state-of-the-art weight training and nutrition program. Made a believer of me when I saw that guy. And all the recruits, or all the Michigan State players were talking about how great those two systems were prior to the season. And it lifted, rising tide lifts all boats, and that strength and conditioning improvement, nutritional improvement raised the entire roster, and that had an impact on going 10-2 this year. Credit to Mel Tucker for overseeing that, putting the money into it. He had the money to put into it from money that D'Antonio helped raise. The entire program had something to do with that, but he made the decisions on the people to execute the plan there, and it helped. And Kenneth Walker, exhibit A of a player that came in as a very good athlete, but turned into an elite athlete. And I think the strength and conditioning program and the nutrition had something to do with it. So, Jalen Berger, can that type of thing help him as well? Now, I know Wisconsin's had great weight training on the offensive line for years. They've had great running backs over the years. So, it's not like they're out to lunch in terms of recruiting and nutrition, no pun intended. But Berger looks pretty good. Could he come to Michigan State, spend a year in the weight room over here and become even better? Possibly. Will he be more motivated than ever? I would expect so. But as of now, I've got to see it to believe it. And he's not done anything in college in 2 years that was better than what Elijah Collins did in 2019. Jordan Simmons has had some good moments here and there. I think all those guys are kind of the same. I want to see if Elijah Collins can get back to getting healthy and staying healthy. The bowl game could be very interesting to see who the number 2 running back is, and if it's Collins, what he looks like. The next question. I didn't number the questions this time. I got a phone call there, but didn't call the number. I'm going to text him and tell him if he wants to join, he can join. Bear with me here for a second, people. Bear with me for a second. Bear with me for a second. Should open the phone lines. Maybe it's getting late, though. Anyway. Cool Breeze 5 from Royal Oak says, let me get back to Sherlock H from Sterling Heights. He says, what bowl game do you think Michigan State will go to? Which one do I want to go to? I'd kind of like to see the stadium in Georgia. Fiesta Bowl would look good on the program because it's been a major bowl longer. We got a guest come up here. I'll be interested to see what he says about it. But which one do I think they'll go to? I'm thinking Peach Bowl or Fiesta Bowl. I think they'll slide into one of those. All right, Cool Breezes from Royal Oak, Michigan. Says, Jim, how do you feel about Goodwin returning for an official visit? Looks like there is some momentum for the good guys on that one. I agree with that. End of the question. I agree that it's good that I don't know whether this is picking up or not.
Call from
Nils.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, let's go out to Houston, Texas, and bring in our next guest. He is formerly from the Horn in Austin, Texas. He is the granddaddy, founder of Texas Top 100 and JUCO advocate. He knows basketball. He knows football. He knows Michigan State football. Former third-string quarterback at Wabash College in Indiana, but he grew up in a Spartan household. He knows more about Michigan State football trivia than anyone that I know. He follows the program closely, and he knows talent as well. We're going to bring him right now. Now, Nils, you're on the air, so behave yourself. Welcome to SpartanMag Live. Nils Deco, what's going on, man?
I'm watching this Buckeye game, and, back in the good old days, like 80 or 81, when Herb Williams and Clark Kellogg and Troy Taylor and Kelvin Ramsey played for the Buckeyes, they had this red jerseys they're playing tonight. I'm telling you, they don't get better than these red jerseys. I hate Ohio State, But like if you're growing up and you're like remembering watching on Channel 4 with Chuck Marlowe and John Laskowski, watching Indiana play Ohio State, you're like these jerseys, they just don't make them better than this. Like the Yankees and the Tigers, like you can't make stuff better than this. And these Buckeye jerseys tonight, they did a great job. And guess what? The Big Ten, everyone talks about the SEC. How about the Big Ten in basketball? It might be the best conference in the country because we do have the Purdue Boilermakers, who I hate more than anybody. Like I hate them all. But the Big Ten basketball, I think it's going to be pretty good this year, Jim C. It's going to be good.
I think you're right. I think it's good. I don't know what happened in the Gavitt games with Big Ten dropping all those games. It doesn't really matter all that much. But I don't have the Ohio State game on here. I'll have to go look at it. But
they won. They beat the Dukies.
They did?
71-66.
Wow.
Krzyzewski just punched 75 people. He's upset. I'm just kidding. It's a joke. But he's not very happy.
Did Ohio State, the red jerseys, did it say Script State like the old Magic jerseys?
No, it said Buckeyes. Buckeyes in Script.
In Script. Because do you remember back in the Kelvin Ramsey era and Clark Kellogg, they had a state one like Michigan State. Do you remember that?
Yes, exactly. I mean,
Michigan
people
State,
forget how good they were back in the Elton Miller days. I mean, you talk about those teams. I mean, Clark Kellogg, Troy Taylor, Kelvin Ramsey, Herb Williams. Who else started that team? Because they were legit.
Carter.
Like,
did they have Carter Scott? Carter Scott.
No, I don't know. Why weren't they in the Final Four back in the day? Who'd they get beat by?
It was hard to get in the tournament. The Big Ten would only get like 2 or 3 teams in the tournament back then. Remember that?
Man, they had studs. And they're all from Ohio.
Granville Waiters. Granville Waiters. That was a little bit later.
Oh, Granville Waiters, exactly. They had dudes. I mean, you talk about like under like teams that should underwhelming. Like they should have been a lot better. Like they should have won a title or 2.
You're right. You're exactly right. Let me see here. Carter Scott played for the Golden State Warriors, Ohio State, 1981 draft. Yeah, you don't remember Carter Scott?
Okay, can I say one thing about some coaches this week?
Yeah.
Okay, so Holtman, Scott Drew. Who's the other one I was talking about? There's another one tonight I was thinking about. Well, they're all from Indiana. That's all I'm saying. Just kidding.
Yeah, Scott Drew. I mean, I'm impressed. Obviously, Baylor, the roster he put together, and emphasis on physical strength and toughness, and getting those guys to shoot. I mean, getting guys that can also shoot in those frames, whether it be evaluation, player development, and then the X's and O's and the defense. I mean, there's a reason why Baylor just destroyed everybody last year. And a lot of people think they might have went back to back, might have won it in the COVID year too. I don't know if Cassius Winston would have had something to say about that or not, but begrudgingly, Baylor, the real deal in basketball right now. They've kind of reloaded.
Well, let's talk about that. So let's talk a little bit about that. I just want to say something. I live down here in Texas, and high school basketball in Texas is probably the best it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Last weekend, Duncanville and Richardson beat, I think, Arizona Compass and Sierra Canyon. Now, I mean, Duncanville, my buddy David Peavy is the head coach there. They're as talented as any high school team in the country. Penny Hardaway's son moved in. I mean, my buddy Peavy can recruit at the highest level. But, I mean, Texas high school basketball, especially in the Dallas area, is probably head and shoulders above anywhere else in the country right now. And so,
That's some statement.
Texas,
Duncanville, that's where McQuaid went, Duncanville, right?
Yeah, that's my buddy's head basketball coach.
Was
there,
he
David Peavy.
But he wasn't the coach there in 2015, was he?
No, he wasn't. He came in. He was DJ Augustine's high school coach at Moore Bend Hightower when DJ Augustine, who played at Texas with Kevin Durant, was a senior.
All right, I saw the Duncanville. I saw McQuaid play his senior
year. They weren't
year.
good then. They won the last 2 state titles in 6A in Texas. We came in after that guy.
When I was down there, and I saw you when I was down there for Cotton Bowl. I don't know if it was a college football playoff year or 2014.
Cotton Bowl, one of the greatest comebacks ever. Keith Mumphrey, he was there.
Yeah, and Conan Dyke and I went and saw McQuaid play. He kind of got frozen out by his teammates that night. Didn't really report it that way because I wasn't really sure, but he never really got the ball. And you saw McQuaid ended up being a really good college player. But that night, his teammates weren't giving him the ball. But anyway, you've been saying that about Texas basketball for a number of years, and it's come to fruition. There's great athletes in the indoor gyms these days. Back in our day, basketball in the summer was an outdoor game. Remember that?
Yep.
AAU basketball hadn't really hit there was no summer circuit. I mean, back then it was New York City, Rucker Park. In Detroit, it was St. Cecilia's, which is indoor. But, so some of these places, some of these Sunbelt places, they've been hit by population upgrades, of course. Everybody moving to Georgia, everybody moving to Texas. And then that coincides with, some bright, beautiful, new, cool gymnasiums all over the Sunbelt. And you're getting, more basketball players coming from that part of the country than was the case in the 70s and 80s. Texas is right there. Numbers. And it's shown itself with some of the programs. I mean, Texas Tech, Houston, Baylor, it's no accident, right?
No, and the coaching's got a lot better in the high school. I mean, especially in the Dallas area. I mean, if you see, like you're talking about the facilities, there's probably 6 or 7, 7 or 8 court facilities up in that area. And there's just, there's a lot of financial wherewithal up there in the Dallas area. I mean, what Jermaine O'Neal's done with Drive Nation, he's got an 8-court facility that's second to none. And, there's a 12-court facility in Frisco that was head and shoulders above everything else about 15 years ago. My buddy Wes Grandstaff was the first, GM of that. And that's not even a big deal anymore. But, like you're saying, the population, I mean, there's 7 million people here in Houston. There's probably 8 or 9 million people in the Metroplex. San Antonio, when I started doing AAU basketball in 2005, San Antonio was better than Austin. And then Austin all of a sudden flipped because it had like Matt Mayer that plays for Baylor, right? He's the kid that, that number, I think it's number 24 for Baylor. I've known that kid since he was probably about 11 or 12. I remember when he first, everyone's like, who's this white kid from Westlake?
He's like Dwayne Cinch's little brother. He's got the mullet going too. He can shoot the 3 and he drives.
What kind of house do you think what kind of money do you think his parents have?
No idea. Tell me.
Worth $100 million.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, and the kid, I knew his parents because I was kind of the first one that promoted him. I'm not saying the first one. I was one of many that started promoting him because this kid had a 40-inch vert. He's 15, 16 years old. He was the number 1 player ranked in the state of Texas when he was a freshman. And all of a sudden, he wasn't enamored with basketball. But, he's going to be a 10 or 12-year pro because he's 6'10". He can pass it. He can shoot it. He's got great feel.
Mike
and he
Miller?
got coached.
Mike Miller type?
Exactly. But more athletic. The kid is an athletic freak.
40-inch. I didn't know he had a 40-inch vertical. That's crazy. By the way, Jaden Akins told us Jaden Akins yesterday after practice.
More talent than anybody.
Jaden Akins after practice yesterday told us he had a 42-inch vertical, but he thought that was on a bad day. He thinks he's actually a 43.
But long term, that offensive rebound he had against Baylor was big time. Michigan State was good for about 25 minutes of that game, and that was a high level game. But if Michigan State's out playing 3 games in 3 days, and Bingham was the whole thing. When Bingham's right, Michigan State's a top 10 team.
Yes.
And he wasn't right on the 3rd day.
Right, he can't play 3 days in a row. I'd like to see that game again. Baylor's good, but I'd like to, and also, Scott Drew is good, but Izzo is really good, obviously, also. And Izzo makes use of a 1-day prep better than anybody in recent history. That's his jam, right? And in Bahamas, you don't get a 1-day prep. It's a 0-day prep. It's a 2-hour prep. So, the things that Baylor does on offense, they do some good things, but they're running out there. Michigan State is like, explaining concepts on a grease board. They don't actually walk through. They walk through a little bit here and there, but you can only cover a small amount of it. So it's not Michigan State at full go in that situation, but it's good for Michigan State's players to have some good moments against a very good UConn team and a good Loyola team, win some games, get out there against Baylor, and then say, oh, man, there's some teams out here with badder dudes than we have. So when we play teams like that, we got to really get dialed into our to all the details. I think that was a great lesson. Before we go any further, I got a post here from Young Feezy Baby, and appreciate Young Feezy Baby with his personal sponsorship into the tip jar today. Thank you, Young Feezy Baby. And he says, and he asks, Jim, have you discussed Hazleton at all? Are we moving on, unquote. We talked a little about coaching generalities, not about people in specifically, but Michigan State being dead last in the country in pass defense. Not going to sit well with Mel Tucker. They've got work to do, and you saw Mel Tucker grabbing that grease board after that second touchdown by Penn State and really going to work in heated fashion to try to get things corrected. it can't stay like that. Whatever the problem is, they got to figure that out, because 10-2 is nice and good, and credit to them for an outstanding season. But if they want to do that again, or if they want to go move on from here and do better, it cannot be done with the way the pass defense has been this year. And it's not just individual problems; it's busts and assignment errors, and that's quality control. And that quality control loose screw needs to get tightened. And I think Mel Tucker is on it. What that results in, I do not know. We learn about Mel Tucker as we go. We knew what Mark D'Antonio was, and he was reluctant to make changes. Some of you think it's for better, for worse, whatever. He was a great coach. But we're still learning about Tucker. We don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. And he's not going to tell us. He's not going to put whispers out there. No one knows except him. So I don't know. But it's a fair question. Nils, your thoughts on Michigan State football? Did you see that they won that game of tackle football in the elements on Saturday against Pennsylvania State University at Spartan Stadium?
It's as good as it gets, but I mean, that's what we've talked about forever. I mean, when D'Antonio got the job in 2007, it was, win in November, and Michigan State was the tougher football team on that Saturday. And, I mean, they're beat up, but they did a nice job. I mean, they took it to Penn State. I think if Michigan State had gotten down 14-0, I don't think they would have come back like Penn State did. But I think Penn State had one chance at that game, and they had to get up. And I think they missed a field goal, did they not? To tie it to 17-17.5.
Yes.
And like you said, I don't think Penn State – I think James Franklin has a lot of talent, but I don't think his guys buy in like Tucker. I think Tucker's guys sell out for him. I think the weakness is with James Franklin is, I think he's a front runner. He looks, Penn State's an easy job in my opinion. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but that job is easier than Michigan State. And I think Tucker has bought into the George Perlis, Nick Saban, Mark D'Antonio, mantra that you've got to be tougher. And I think they were tougher on that Saturday. Drew Beasley, Panashuk, even Jalen Hunt showed up. I mean, I was impressed with the toughness of Michigan State. And the offensive line was better, though. I mean, Michigan State, like you said, you couldn't believe how well they ran against Penn State. And those holes on the right side, like they were against Michigan, when Curry and Jarvis were there on the right side, when Michigan State was probably probably the best running football team in the country on that Saturday against the Michigan defense that, Ohio State only got 64 yards on 30 carries last Saturday. I mean, you can say when number 79 went out for Michigan State, the whole season changed. And on that Saturday, Michigan State was as good as anybody. Yeah, Michigan went up and down the field, but that's Michigan State, they bent, they didn't break in that game, and that's because they were healthier. But that offensive line against Michigan was as good as anybody in the country all year long. 197 yards for Kenneth Walker III with 5 touchdowns. That was as good, an example of a running back and offensive line as anybody in the country you're going to see. And so,
how was the pass protection that day for Michigan State?
Against Michigan?
Yeah.
It was average. Hutchinson is a top 5. There's a reason he's going to be a top 5 draft pick. And I want to give you credit. I don't know if you remember. Remember when you did your top 25 in Michigan? You do that every year, right?
Used to.
Ratings of all the kids.
Top 25 on the 25th. Used to do that on Christmas Day. Used to.
I remember you had an upset stomach the day you saw him on video. You're like, this kid's going to be a problem. You said it. You go, Nils, this kid is going to be better than his dad. And he's as good as football player there is in the country. He dominated that game. Ohio State, like people said, they should have rolled the pocket away from him, not even thought about going near him. And he dominated that game. I know Najabo was good and all, but Hutchinson is a freaking man who's as good as college football player as Michigan's probably had in the last 10 years.
I don't remember. So what was Michigan State's pass defense against Michigan? I have to look it up. I don't remember it being a huge problem. Pass protection.
I think they were. I think they did a good job of running at Hutchinson. I don't think Hutchinson was. Ohio State. You have to be physical with the dude. I don't think they were physical with the dude. Michigan State was physical with the dude. Yeah. Horse is going to hold. Horse is going to hold every other play, and you're going to beat him up in the ribs. And I don't think Hutchinson was as good in the second half as he was in the first half.
All right.
It's not like they chipped him all the time.
All right. Now also Young Feezy Baby with another personal sponsorship. Appreciate that, Young Feezy Baby. He says, I have not read about Hazleton on the recruiting trail. Is that a tell? Unquote question. So that's a question. Hazleton, sometimes coordinators, some programs have coordinators that don't have as many recruiting chores as others. And I don't know if that's the case. That's not been spoken as the case with Hazleton and Michigan State, but there was not a lot with him in recruiting in past years either. So I would not jump to conclusions on that as a tell. So Nils Deco, bowl game. What bowl game do you think Michigan State's going to go to? What do you think? What bowl game would you like to see Michigan State go to? You're Michigan State super fan and ultra informed Michigan State history in the last 4 years.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I want Iowa to win, and I don't care what bowl game we get to. I'm sorry. I want us to win 11 games. So I want us to go to a bowl game where Michigan State can win 11 games. And if that's in the Citrus or the Outback, I understand everybody wants to be in a New Year's Six Bowl, all that stuff. But I'm more about Iowa beating Michigan because I don't want them to be in the top 4. I'm sorry. That's just me. I like Iowa. I realize I like Iowa. And Phil Parker, Lorain, Ohio, 2-time All Big Ten Spartan, who I still think should be on the staff sometime in East Lansing. But I like Iowa better than I do Michigan. Okay, I'm cheering for them on Saturday, and I think it's going to be like 9-6. I'm not kidding. I know you think I'm crazy, and and Michigan's got this offense, but I'm telling you right now, Parker's he'll have it set up, and Iowa. They're pretty tough. So I think what is going to happen to Michigan is what happened to us at the Purdue game, right? Michigan State expended all that energy. They were physically beat up. I think everyone's patted Michigan on the back, and Harbaugh is all about giving his money back to the university and, all kumbaya, and Rich Eisen's happy. Everyone's happy in Ann Arbor, right? They won the national title. Your boy Karsh and all those criminals on the radio in Detroit, they've all won the national title.
Criminals.
I was going to give them the game.
I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan's a little flat at the beginning, and I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa has some moments.
They're not dynamic. I'm telling you, they're going to get hit in the ribs. They're going to get hit in the ribs, and I don't think Michigan can. That was their Mecca. They went to Mecca. It's been 9 years since they beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see all those people rush the field?
Mm-hmm.
They've never done that before.
Mm-hmm.
Did you listen to Brandstatter and the old man Beardover on the radio? It's over.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you. What's that line? Is it 6.5, 7, 9, 10?
I heard 8.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you right now, I was going to cover. I don't care if Spencer Petras or Padillo or me or you are quarterbacking. Iowa knows how to play in that game. Ferentz is as good a football coach as there is. He doesn't get enough credit for what he's done at Iowa for the last 20 years. They're 10-2. They're not bad.
Yeah, I thought they were really good in the first half of the season. They kind of hit a wall. Wisconsin hammered them. And, Petras last year when I was doing the pre-snap read about Iowa, I thought that he was not very good. I thought he had a Brooke Trout look. I thought that he had problems. And then he came out against Michigan State and he was good and steady. And I was like, well, I got that one wrong. But then, he's been so up and down, and now he's kind of settled back into what I thought he was, which is very unsteady. I've not watched them a lot recently. Last night I wanted to go back and rewatch Iowa-Nebraska from the weekend. I know Nebraska was leading that game most of the way. I know Iowa played tough and kind of stole the victory, had a big play on special teams, had a defensive touchdown. I think
Nebraska
credit to them.
Came out running the option. That's all they were doing, and Iowa wasn't set up for it.
Okay. And I want to watch to see, because I want to see the latest on Iowa just to get an idea for myself whether they've got a shot at this.
Have a shot. They always have a shot.
I agree with what you're saying, and everybody knows about the intangibles after you've done like what you said with Michigan, and if you slay the dragon, and they slayed their dragon, that is their personal dragon. It's not just getting a big win. I mean, that was VJ day there, for those guys.
Their coaches haven't been in this position though, Jim. That's the one thing. Mm-hmm. Remember you got 6 new assistants, right?
Yeah.
And they've been marking that day, and going down in the submarine, the yellow submarine, and that's what they're going to do. But they got beat by us. So here's my thing. in a physical game,
Well,
Ohio State wasn't physical.
no, they weren't. All right.
Iowa's always going to be more physical.
All right, here's what I say about Iowa. Okay, I've got to watch them again. Their D-line is good. It's not as good as it's been for like the really good Iowa teams when I was watching them earlier in the season. I really studied their game against Iowa State and the Indiana game, but we thought Indiana was good back then, and they weren't. I've kind of taken my eye off Iowa
Indiana
since then.
was good back then, though.
They were good
back
back then.
Healthy.
Yeah. So, but Iowa was getting all those turnovers back then with all those linebackers and defensive backs coming back, which I said on the Underground Bunker message board back in August, right before the season started. I was like, keep an eye on Iowa because when they return the entire secondary and a middle linebacker, they're going to be. You talk about being on the same page. I mean, they're going to be like William Shakespeare on the same page. Now, Iowa here with Michigan, I got to look to see where Iowa is in run defense. Can Iowa stop the run? That's usually what they specialize in. I know they've been in the top 3 in the Big Ten most of the year. Penn State's been good in that category. Wisconsin's been the best. If you stop the run and make Cade McNamara throw against you, Iowa has a way of changing pictures on you and presenting you with difficult hieroglyphics, and that's why they lead the nation in interceptions quite frequently. It's possible that they can stop the run and force some third and longs, second and longs, and force some turnovers. Ron Armstrong was on here earlier, and he was really talking about how great Michigan has been this year in terms of really doing well on second and long. He says they turn 2nd and 10 into 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 2 better than anybody in the country, and that's a credit to them. So keep an eye on 2nd and long. Can they, throw those little safe delays to the tight end? Can they stay out of trouble? But when Iowa's got their zone defense pumping right, it can be a problem. Now Iowa played too much man-to-man. I know what game it was. I watched Iowa against Purdue, and Purdue really surprised them and threw for a ton. Remember, that was the big surprise game. Iowa played man-to-man like all day that day for some reason. They got chased out of the zone. And I mean, O'Connell for Purdue is very good. Brown's very good offensive strategist with the pass game. Like Ron Armstrong was talking about earlier, styles make fights, and Purdue with their passing attack picked that defense apart. But not many other teams have been able to do it. But before Michigan gets their college football playoff reservations ready, running the ball might be difficult, and then throwing into that shape-shifting zone could lead to some interceptions. That being said, Petrus and the Iowa offense, where do they get their points from? They're going to need, but Iowa, like they've been
run right at them.
No, well,
they're going to do what Michigan State did. They're going to run right at them. They're going to realize
it's possible.
What do you mean it's possible? I mean, the offensive line, they had the best center in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
their center was all the offensive lineman of the year, right?
Yes.
Okay, who's the best offensive line coach in college football?
Kirk Ferentz.
Yeah. Okay. All I know is what I remember back on October 30th and what I saw with a healthy Michigan State offensive line, they ran it right up their ass. Okay. We've never had the offensive line that Iowa's had. I don't know.
I'm going to ask you to watch your language, please.
Sorry. They don't have an offense. I understand they don't have KW9 or whatever we call them, K9, whatever. But I just think if you look at the scores, like, okay, so the last time they played 10-5, 2019, it was 3-10, Michigan won. 2016, 14-13, Iowa won. 2013, 24-21. They're not beating them by more than a touchdown. And that kicker for Iowa is pretty darn good. I know Michigan's Moody's really good, but I like Iowa's kicker. He's got better pop. You watch him, he's got some pop in his leg.
I'll say one other thing about Ohio State. One of the reasons I thought Michigan State had a path to victory against the Buckeyes is the way Ohio State played against Nebraska and Penn State. One little bounce here and there, and that game could have gotten away from Ohio State. They could have lost to Nebraska. They could have lost to Penn State. They finished it out, credit to them. But there's that part of it with Ohio State, and then the other thing. As badly as Ohio State blew out Michigan State was able to run the ball a little bit against Ohio State. Kenneth Walker averaged, 8 yards a carry? He only had like 6-7 carries. They busted a couple of running plays on Ohio State. Couldn't stick with it, couldn't sustain, got behind 21-0. Kenneth Walker was injured, so they couldn't, really establish that ground game. But the writing was on the wall that Michigan State could have if the game had bounced differently. That sector of the game, Michigan State's run game against Ohio State's run defense, Michigan State could have gotten something going there. Knowing all those things and forming it together, and you put a game in Ann Arbor in snow flurries and cold conditions, and I don't have to tell you what happened last Saturday, but it was not, I didn't think it was shocking. Now, Michigan on the ground scoring that many plays, in that many possessions in a row, that was surprising to an extent, but being able to run the ball didn't surprise me. And then Ohio State, Olave, there was that play where Ohio State ended up kicking a field goal late in the first half, had the receiver open, and Stroud missed him, and Olave was behind him, and he dropped it. That's an Arizona kid throwing to a California kid in a freezer. And he's not as accurate as he usually is, and the guy's hands are not as good as they usually is. Cost him 4 points, cost him a tie.
Okay, if the Michigan versus Iowa game this Saturday were played in Green Bay or Soldier Field, who would you pick?
Well, I mean, both of these teams can play cold weather football, so this particular matchup, it's not a big deal. I don't think it would change whether it's fast track or cold for these two teams. I don't think. I think Michigan's got more offensive skill, so playing in Lucas Oil Stadium helps Michigan, even though they've been more of a running attack this year. I think. Let me see here. Rushing defense in the Big Ten. Yeah, Iowa's number 3 in the Big Ten. Are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Iowa's number 3 in the Big Ten in rush defense. Average per carry, they are number 2. They allow 3.0 yards per carry. That's second best in the Big Ten. So
behind Wisconsin, right?
What's that? Yeah, behind Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 2.1. So, Michigan probably going to have to go to the air at least a little bit. So we'll have to see. McNamara thrown into can be some challenging coverages. And if he makes a mistake on his own half of the field, that's where Iowa can get you a little bit. So, I mean, Michigan's got some work to do still. They got some work to do, and they're coming off slaying the Dragon, which is never a great situation.
No, I mean, but when have they done that? They haven't done it. So, I mean, they're not up for it. They think they're in the college football playoff, and they're patting each other on the back tonight after watching ESPN and Reese Davis and Herb Street and Joey Galloway and that bunch. I mean, I just don't think. I mean, you know how smug your buddy is, your buddy Mr. Harbaugh. I mean, did you listen to stuff? I'm like, I mean, I don't like Michigan. I have my buddy John Albertson, who's the first scholarship kicker at Michigan. My buddy Ray Jackson, Fab Five, Ty Street. I mean, I have them on a thread, and I crucify them. And so, they're
people. This guy knows those guys personally. He knows Streets and Ray Jackson and those guys personally. Deals with them.
So, I mean,
youth athletics in Texas. Go ahead.
But I just don't think. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'll be in California at a party, and hopefully I'll get to watch this game. But I see Iowa doing something sick and just upsetting and the whole thing, and chaos will abound.
That would be about like Michigan to do that, to lose that game.
And then they're going to want to fire Harbaugh.
So what do you think about Brian Kelly going to LSU and Lincoln Riley going out west? Everybody in the country's talking about it. Might as well let you talk about it.
2.0.
Brian Kelly?
Yeah, he's Nick Saban 2.0. He's going to kill it there. That guy can coach.
So he'll do well there, but he will get fired there.
No, he won't. He won't get fired.
He'll get fired there.
Mm-mm.
He'll do well for. I mean, did Les Miles? I mean, it depends on what's your definition of being fired.
Les Miles is team that won the national title with Saban's team.
I know, but it depends on what at some point he'll be forced out. He'll be forced out at some point. That's just the way LSU is.
Years always. I mean, the state's gonna be bankrupt if they try to get rid of him.
I know. Now I think he could very well win a national title. Plus, you know what else he's seeing? He's seeing that Saban is at the end of his line. He thinks. He says now's the time to go down there.
And he's on him.
What's that?
I mean, how much longer can? I mean, it's like Izzo hold on for Krzyzewski. I mean, Izzo's 9 years younger than Krzyzewski.
Yeah.
So Coach K retires. Izzo's. It makes it a little bit easier. I mean, they can say John Shire's going to recruit like Krzyzewski. He ain't going to do that. So, I mean, I think Brian Kelly. Remember, he won 2 national titles at Grand Valley State. It's not like they've done that ever since, right?
They've been pretty good, but not like that.
But they have won a national title, have they?
I think Chuck, what's his name, won one there that ended up going to
Chuck Martin.
Yeah, I think he might have won one.
But that was with Kelly had set that up, dude.
Yes. Now
like
Fair State's really good, by the way. There's always a really good now. Fair State's really good. There's always a really good Division II or Division III national power in the state of Michigan because there's not great high school football in the state of Michigan, but there's a good number of between the cracks, under the rocks, hidden players because it's so hard to recruit in the state of Michigan because you got to go there to get there. Nobody knows what's going on in Muskegon and Traverse City and some of those places because you can't pass through the state of Michigan. Nobody's passing through. Chatham, Ontario, and Thunder Bay, going through Michigan and stopping in, like they do in Georgia and Ohio.
That's what I was trying to figure out about this Van Summerins being from Essexville. How like they find those?
I don't know. In the SEC back in 2018, 3 seasons ago, there were 6 new coaches hired into the SEC. 6 of them. Just 3 years ago, Jimbo Fisher was one of them. And Jimbo Fisher is the only one that's still coaching there. The other 5 have been fired.
And the best he's done is last year he was good, but they
gave him a ton of money. Yeah, now he's 8-4 and he just lost to Orgeron. So, and Texas A&M, you know how it is down there. I mean, they're serious, but they're not as crazy as they are in Baton Rouge and Knoxville and some of these other places in Gainesville where you have a bad month and they want you gone. Auburn, I said it earlier at SpartanMag.com this week, and I think I said it here last week. The fans in the SEC are one of the strongest resources for football in the SEC. That is one of their strong resources. They sell tickets. It creates interest. That generates money and excitement in recruiting territory, recruiting excitement. That is a strength, but it's also a detriment. The fans are too crazy. It's like, New York City's a little bit like that with Yankees. If you start batting 240 there, they get on you and you can't get out of it. Mullen has a bad month and he doesn't survive. If Jim Harbaugh had this season in Gainesville or Auburn or Baton Rouge, he wouldn't. Last season, if he would have had last season in Gainesville or Baton Rouge or Auburn or Knoxville, he would not have survived the season. As much as demanding as Michigan fans are, it's not like it is down there. And to Michigan's credit, they gave him another year, and they've had a good season this year. But it's a detriment to those programs down there. I think there's only 4 coaches in the entire SEC out of 14 that have been there for 4 years. Everybody else is first or second year, or third year, and now it's not good. And I think it's gotten to the point. It's gotten to the point where it's tripping those programs up. It's not allowing Auburn, Alabama, and Florida, and even now LSU to be what they could be because they keep resetting all the time. The only program that had patience with a head coach was Kentucky, and they had patience through a 5-6, a 5-6, a 6-5, 7-5, and then in year 5 he turned it around. He never would have gotten year 5 in those other programs. It's tough down there, and the coaching churn nationally is so much that it's hard to find a coach. Who are you gonna? Maybe once the coaching carousel and the music stops and the musical chairs ends, maybe everybody will have one. But you know how Tennessee has gotten caught a couple times without a coach to hire. LSU when they hired. When Orgeron was hired at LSU, they thought they were getting Herman, right? But Herman took the Longhorns. They ended up they were like, okay, they shrugged their shoulders. I guess we'll have to take Orgeron, and they were not happy about it. And then Brady came in and they did a great job with their offense, and they won a national title. But they were not happy with him. That's why they were not happy to hire him. The crowd wasn't, the fan base wasn't. That's why one bad season and he was gone. But there's not, it's hard to find that next wave of coaches. And that's why now all of a sudden Michigan State looks kind of smart getting Tucker when they did last week, because he'd be in the middle of the Oklahoma discussions right now, right? Maybe. I don't know. They're talking about Venables. They're talking about, because now the coach.
They're talking about all kinds of people. I think they're in a bad spot. Unless, I don't know what, they're having financial issues. According to some people, with the buyout of leaving the Big 12, going to the SEC, like Texas had to help them write a check. Oklahoma with David Boren, they've had some financial issues. They're not solvent. So it's not like, Oklahoma there's a reason they're good in football. What is that, Jim?
Oklahoma, oil
Yeah.
money, proximity to the state of Texas, and oil money, and it's the and
That's
it's,
it.
well, and also it's a state that has been serious about football for a long time with no
I
major.
understand, but I mean, if Oklahoma is where Nebraska is, Oklahoma's Nebraska. The fact
Proximity,
that
the
they are
Panhandle, yeah, the
the fact
Panhandle.
that they're an hour and a half from Dallas, they're 3 hours from Dallas. I mean, that's where and I know they've got down to California with Lincoln Riley, and they've upgraded their talent, and everybody wants to play for Lincoln Riley, or they did. I mean, Oklahoma. Where's Billy Sims from? Where was David Overstreet
Hooks, Texas.
from?
Billy Sims was from Hooks, Texas, right?
Okay, who else is? Exactly.
All of them. They're all from
David
Texas.
Overstreet was from Big Sandy. I mean, Joe Washington was from Port Arthur. You know what I mean? Like all the great football players,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, outside of the Selman brothers, a lot of them were from Texas for Oklahoma. So, I mean, Oklahoma, it's not like,
Where were the
they got a
Selman
bunch
brothers from? Where were the Selman brothers from?
they're from right there in Tulsa, or
Okay.
right there in either
Jinx?
Midwest City, or they're from right there.
Okay. All right. Dewey Selman, Leroy Selman, they were great.
Lucius. Who was
Lucius.
the defensive line coach from Michigan State? Is that Lucius?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot
it's
that.
Lucius.
For John L. Smith, I forgot all about that.
Yeah. He was not good. He was past his prime. Yeah.
All right.
He was on that staff somehow. I don't understand how that all worked out, but it wasn't good for the Spartans. And you know who's the greatest recruit for Lucius Selman?
I can't remember. Who?
You never watched The Courtship of Marcus Dupree on
Okay.
30 for 30?
Okay, I forgot that. Yeah, okay. Marcus Dupree.
Yeah.
And Lucius Selman, I don't think appreciated that when John L. Smith had, that statement at the Horseshoe when, the players are playing their hearts out and the coaches are blowing it. Remember that statement? I think it was Lucius Selman didn't really like that statement.
No, I don't think I've been called out.
Anyway, a moment ago I said Michigan State looked smart with the money they gave to Tucker. I wouldn't go that far, but that's the market, and he was marketable, and Michigan State took him out of the market.
Well, he set the whole thing. I mean, Michigan State. I mean, I think Ishbia and St. Andre and Massalm and Strayhorn, whoever these dudes, that put this thing together. I mean, I'm happy that Michigan State has some people that are forward thinking. I think that's what people don't realize about Michigan State. It's like you got Dan Gilbert and you got Matt Ishbia, and probably 80% of the loans for housing in the United States are done by Michigan State graduates. So, everyone needs a house, right? So, I mean, who was the biggest builder of all time? You ever heard of KB Housing?
Go on.
Okay, well, Eli Broad from Detroit, Michigan, who's a Michigan State grad. I mean, that's the thing is like when you're a school of 50,000 people every year, it's like, when Michigan State, I think I was reading an article, I think in 1935 or something, Michigan State was a school of 1,000 people or something, right?
What year?
And I can't remember what the year was, but like in the 30s, I think it was a school of 1,000 people.
Really?
And if you look exponentially, it's gotten bigger, 50,000 students every year. I mean, you have an alumni base of 500,000 people. I mean, there's strength in numbers. And so, Michigan could want us to go away. Michigan State's not going away. Like you always say, there's a guy that grew up 5 miles from campus. And I still think, and you say it all the time, I think Magic Johnson is as important a person in the modern day Michigan State in terms of media, in terms of brand, of any person that ever suited up for an athletic program.
He was a help. I mean, he was a natural resource. He was a local resource.
In 1979, I mean, Michigan State hadn't been in the Final Four since '57, and you've got this guy who changed the NBA. It's like, just, good things have to happen to you, right? Mm-hmm. And Michigan State is blessed that Irving Magic Johnson was born, grew up in Lansing, went to Lansing Everett, won a state title. I mean, like, good things happen. I think, like, Ishbia being a walk-on for Izzo. Like, there's good things, and Izzo being there 38 years. It's like, there's things at Michigan State, like, I just think what Michigan State's done now is with Tucker, giving him the long, 10-year deal. I think he has the ability to do things that Michigan State can win a national title in the next 60 months in college football, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with you, and I never would have agreed with you 18 months ago. But I've seen enough. I've seen the engine spark a couple of times. It made me say, oh, okay. And that's Tucker's intention. And he's recruiting right now, probably, settling into a hotel somewhere in the Southeast right now. Very intentional about what you just mentioned. Every coach has big ambition, wanting to do things and win national championships. Every coach wants to do it, and now is his time to try to beat that path in that direction. And I don't think it's impossible. And I wouldn't have thought Michigan State would be, a national title type of, ambitions toward that end, since the 60s. I just wouldn't have thought that they'd have been capable of that. The 2013 team was capable of doing that. It turned out, surprised everybody, but when they were all said and done, they could have taken the field with Florida State and Auburn and competed with them. I'm not sure if they would have won, maybe. D'Antonio thought it back then. He still thinks that. That was the last year before the playoff, right? Michigan State might not have been invited to the playoff that year. They might have been fifth. Stanford might have been fourth. But 1 year later, Ohio State wins it. Michigan State was in that same peer group at that juncture. Now, was that Michigan State like the planets lining up? And that was years of, proper evaluation and player development, and being fortunate with some of those guys that they landed on. And it'll take some of that. Michigan State's doing it a little bit further from home now, which is a different construct in terms of roster makeup. There's different ways to do things. Tucker's been a part of programs that have done it a number of different ways. Izzo and D'Antonio believed, for them and the way they want to do things, they wanted as many players from as close to campus as possible because it just creates a little bit more of, you know who your guys are a little bit more. You know who your people are. You recruit them. You have them on campus more often. Now, this day and age with the summer visits, maybe that changes. Maybe you can get to know guys from Florida and Texas more easily and more substantially now than you could have 10 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so I think, and I'm starting to think about Tucker, right? The way he recruits, and I don't know how many players that Saban personally recruits, or Lincoln Riley, or Brian Kelly, but what Tucker does is the Perkins kid from Cy Ridge down here in Metro. He's a 6.1. I think he's rated by Rivals, right? He's a 5-star, right? So Jason Sukumel, who's the recruiting guy for Orange Bloods, he's like you. He's one of the best ever lived. He said if Michigan State was closer, it would be a done deal for Perkins and Michigan State. Like, Perkins thinks Tucker is the dude. So it's the same thing with Winfield up there in Louisville. So Louisville is just, it's, my son was living up there, and it's just North Dallas. It's like Frisco, that whole area that, that's where all the people have moved to. But, I mean, the job that Tucker does one-on-one, I don't think there's anybody better right now going one-on-one as a recruiter, as a head coach in the country. I don't know who, it's like with Urban Meyer. I thought Urban Meyer for a long time was the best one-on-one coach. Like, if he got in your living room, you're probably going to Ohio State or Florida or wherever it may be. And I think that's why, he was probably the best recruiter one-on-one. Now, I think Tucker's that guy now. I mean, that's why if he gets in front of somebody, like if you saw those videos of him and Gilmore, or the Twitter of the tight end from Arizona, and you see the family with Gilmore and Tucker and the tight end. I can't remember his name. Is it Brocious?
Masunis from Arizona.
Okay, but I'm like, Tucker gets it. I think it's like it goes back to when he was selling that food door to door. And he talked about it, I can't remember what it was, and how he told that lady, like, okay, I can sell you this meat and I'll pay you, whatever it was for a ice cream. I can't remember what it was, but I was just amazed. I just think one-on-one, I don't think we realize how powerful Tucker is. Like, I think that's where he's at the best. Like,
he recruits,
you get him one-on-one with family, I don't think there's anybody better going right now.
And I was talking to Jason Kilp about that.
American family, like, hey, look at this dude. I just think that's the thing he's got. And if he can recruit 10 guys personally every year, and let's say he gets 40% of them, and these are all 5-star or high, 5.8s on the rival scale. Well, guess what? He does that in 3 years. He's got a roster that, is on the level of Alabama, Ohio State, or anybody else. And I think that's what he's going to do. And I think that's what you'll see. I think he has that ability. And now the fact that Kenneth Walker, what he did, I don't think people realize how valuable that is. You have the number one portal guy in the country. You can get anybody you want now. Now everything's changed.
Well, theoretically,
all the rules are changed.
Theoretically, they took Berger. This guy, Georgia Tech, Gibbs, he's available running back now. Michigan State's knocking on that door a little bit, I think. But I thought it was interesting that Michigan State went ahead and brought Berger in at this juncture. Now, as far as Mel Tucker recruiting, we talked about this earlier in the show. There's a corner from Denton, Texas, Ryan Yates, 2023, a junior, number 48 player in the country, high 4-star.
Denton got it, right?
Yeah. And Tucker saw him today, and I was talking to Jason Killip about it, and Ryan Yates has been talking to Jason Killip, and he loves Tucker. He told Jason Killip that Brian Kelly used to call him every week, and he liked Kelly, and he was feeling Kelly and all that stuff. But he says no coach makes him feel like Tucker feels. That gets right to what your point is. It's a guy in Denton, Texas, national top 50 corner. Michigan State's never gotten in on top 50 corners when they're juniors in Texas. That's a different pool of talent Michigan State is pursuing. I'm not telling you.
Tucker's going to have the dudes that he recruits.
He's got a shot to get guys like that. Michigan State, that's not been their party in the past. So this is like a new frontier.
Tucker, though.
Right. It's a new frontier. I don't know where it's headed. I don't know but it's Michigan State's never had a cat like this behind the wheel. I'm not saying he's better than anybody. It's just different. But the ceiling of potential is immense. Now, the pass defense thing, with the lack of same pageness, which is Tucker's, that's his thing, is pass defense. Now, I know he delegates to Hazelton and Tillman and Barnett, and we know Barnett's been a great coach in the past. So whatever happened for Michigan State to have their signals crossed in pass defense as often as it was this year needs to get fixed. And it's not just the corners and the safeties being not on the same page. It's, linebackers, the horizontal spacing, or like on the 14-yarder when Darius Snow was matched up with Datsun. That can't happen with the safety over on the single receiver side of the field when there are trips to the boundary over here, and you've got Snow on Datsun. I mean, the safety's got to help, I would imagine, but he's way over here. I can't believe it was drawn up that way. Signals are crossed there. That part of it has to get straightened out. And we'll be talking about that all off season. For Michigan, when people start talking about staying at that 10-2 level or getting better, it's gonna be real hard to stay there. And Tucker knows it, and he's on it. But it's a little alarming that it got to that level. But that's college
football. I think
football.
you also, though, have people. I mean, how often are you going to get a kid from Colorado Mesa and you're too deep having to play, Justin White? Your best freshman, gets hurt against Purdue, Brantley, who was starting to come. I mean, he was your best corner. I mean, during the Michigan game, that last quarter, who was your best corner?
He was, but then he had problems against Purdue. Got the signals.
He was beat up, though. I mean, he was beat up. He's 160 pounds. I mean, when he's 185 pounds, he's a first-round draft pick.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I looked up the stats. When Michigan played Michigan State, Michigan had 3 sacks. Ajabo had 2, and Hutchinson had 1. There were some holding penalties. No quarterback hits, just those 3 sacks. Michigan State had no sacks and 2 quarterback hits. Panishuk had a quarterback hit, and your guy Justin White had a quarterback hit. So Michigan's pass rush was good, but not as disruptive as it's been in other games that day. But that goes to your point. The Michigan State's
ball, though, when you run the ball, I mean, you can't pin your ears back. So they weren't against Ohio State. They were able to pin their ears back because they knew that Stroud was going to pass 49 times.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the balance things go. So they can't pin their ears back, and that's what they did against Ohio State because Ohio State, for some reason, didn't think they could run the football.
Mm-hmm. Ohio State was criticized for getting away from the run too much, I think, in the Nebraska game. And, that Michigan-Ohio State game has always been an ice box game.
The last 19 years, they said, right? The last 20 years, whoever ran the ball the best won the game.
Sure. I mean, going back to the Bo and Woody days, I mean, it's a cold weather game. I mean, in the middle of June, open up your freezer and feel what the temperature is. That's the weather that Ohio State-Michigan game is going to be played in November. You can bank on it pretty much. So, in those days when it was Bo and Woody, they would fashion their teams to beat the other team with the run game. And then, whoever had the best run game on that day and came out and won the Big Ten, then they'd go out to Pasadena and USC would kill them. Either one of them, over and over and over, right? Or UCLA or Washington. That's the way it was in the 70s. 10-year war is a 10-year pillow fight. I mean, it was physical football, but those teams were terrible in bowl games. So, but what you had to do to beat the team in your neighborhood might not be the most conducive way to beat your next opponent. That was the problem with Nebraska and Oklahoma for a number of years in the 80s. They were so good in the 70s, but Nebraska, designed their defense to handle the Oklahoma wishbone, and Oklahoma designed their defense to handle the Tom Osborne I formation option, right? And that's off zone coverage with guys that can run and tackle and hit. And you had to be really good to beat that opponent on that day to win that game at the end of November, and the winner goes to the Orange Bowl. And that was all well and good until Schnellenberger came around with Miami and started throwing it around in Florida State. And those Oklahomas and Nebraskas back then could not make that transition from beating themselves and then going to the Sun Belt and playing a different style of football. So now Ohio State had been building their team. I mean, hey, Urban Meyer, they could throw it, but they were physical. Like you said, they were physical with the run game. They could do both. Ryan Day came in and increasingly became pass-oriented, and Stroud was very good. I thought Stroud is better than the guy they had last year that's with the Bears. I think he makes more reads, whereas the guy for the Bears was a one-read guy, and if the guy wasn't open, he'd tuck it and run it, and that was effective, but I didn't think he was much of an NFL prospect, and I think he showed that last year when he struggled against Indiana. But anyway, Ohio State has been, since Meyer has left, they've been going more and more toward pass-oriented, which has made them softer and softer. Those three receivers are great. And after the Michigan State game, I wondered, well, maybe is this Ohio State team this year's 2020 Alabama? Are they this year's 2019 LSU? Do they just have so much aerial firepower that doesn't matter what you do, they're going to outscore you? And I thought that might be the case. And you know what, Nils? It still might be the case, but they're not going to get a chance to prove it because they lost in the icebox. They didn't do what...
If they played that game in Minneapolis this weekend, exactly. 100%.
But they didn't do what Switzer and Osborne used to do against each other, and Hayes and Schembechler. You had to win your own neighborhood before you could go down and try to prove yourself against Georgia. They're not going to get a chance to prove themselves against Georgia because they didn't get it done in the icebox. So, I mean, you got to be able to do it in both. You got to be an all-weather team, and I think Ohio State got away from that a little bit. Stroud is a California quarterback, and those receivers or is he an Arizona quarterback? He's a California quarterback.
He's from California, and then Wilson and Najabe Smith are both Texas kids, and then Olave, I think, is from
California. Olave's from California.
Olave, so you get
two California guys, two Texas guys. And they were not comfortable. I mean, Stroud, of course, the pass rush had something to do with it, but Stroud was not as accurate as he usually is, and it wasn't just all the pass rush. And those receivers balls were going off their fingertips like they don't normally do. Now, Michigan was running the ball. That had nothing to do with Ohio State's defense and the problems they had. But Ohio State would have had a better chance of winning a shootout if it hadn't been for the weather. But God bless Michigan. We've never said that before, but they won in the icebox. Credit to them. Have to be all weather in this part of the country. And Steve Spurrier used to say, we only had 3 or 4 run plays, and we only run it and we only practice it in practice maybe 5% of the time, and that's probably too much. Remember when Spurrier used to say that? Well, hell, he never had to come north and play ever. In 1995, Michigan State beat Michigan, and Tony Banks threw for like 300 yards, right? Had a great day, right? Future NFL quarterback. The next week against Indiana, Michigan State won, but you know how many passes he attempted? I think 9. It was in Bloomington, but there was like a 30-mile-an-hour crosswind. You could not throw the ball that day, even with an NFL quarterback. Could not do it. So you have to be an all-weather team. So you have to spend time in practice forming that and putting that together. That's the way it's always been. And in this part of the country, and Ohio State got taught a lesson in that regard this year. Also, the defensive thing at Ohio State, I was talking about it last year when I was studying Ohio State before the Michigan State-Ohio State game, and I didn't even realize they'd hired Kerry Coombs. Do you remember that? When I said they can't win a national title with that guy as a coordinator. And
no, you're not a fan.
And well, yeah, and then this year it showed itself against Oregon, and then he got fired. And I was saying that before the season, and then. But, I mean, it was just trash against Oregon. I mean, that defense was just – you had good athletes that just – you talk about not being on the same page. Really bad. And they fired the coordinator, and they put the play calling in the hands of other people, and they did it as a committee. And they improved, but you can only repair a 747 so much in the air. when the season's underway. You can only revamp a defense so much once the season's underway. When it comes down to those specifics and the quality control, that stuff needs to be ingrained in the spring in an August camp by a coordinator at that time, and that showed itself also in this game. But the run defense, Michigan State ran the ball against them a little bit. And it would have been more if that score hadn't gotten away. So, all those elements were in place. So now, about a month ago, I was talking to you about Ryan Day a little bit. And I'm like, he's got talent right now, but I don't think he's recruiting like Urban Meyer did.
No one's recruiting like Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer's the best recruiter in the last 10 years.
And, all these coaches are competitive, but Urban Meyer is ultra competitive and just nasty person competitive. All right, I don't mind saying
like
that.
The whole Baron Browning thing. You ever heard about the Baron Browning thing?
No, he was a linebacker there, right? What happened?
Yeah. So he's from Kennendale, right? My buddy Logan Barrett, his dad was his high school coach. So who's that Tosh LaPoy? He was the defensive line coach at Alabama at the time, right? Remember that name?
Kinda.
Okay, well, he was the guy that recruited him. And it was a done deal, right? It was a done deal.
For Alabama?
Well, yeah. Well, at the last 5 minutes, that's when they got the Jeff. Who's that DB that plays for the Lions? Akuda, what's his name?
Yeah, Akuda.
Okay, so Meyer got Akuda and Baron Browning out of Dallas in the middle of the night, and it wasn't done. It probably wasn't done for free. So Urban Meyer, he realized when he was at Notre Dame as a receivers coach for Lou Holtz. It's not about the X and O's, it's about the Jimmys and the Joes.
Well, that's true if you got but you better not skimp on the X's and O's because it'll show itself.
Well, in time, exactly. But that's why I think Urban Meyer's so good in terms of
Ask Larry Coker.
He was able. Yeah, exactly. But he realized what he had to have, and he wanted the best and the brightest, and he always had the best and the brightest.
Well, he and Saban knew that their X's and O's were going to be really good, and then to bolster it, to win at the very end against the very best, you need Jimmys and Joes too, obviously. Yeah, I agree with it, and he went after it, and he was good, and he recruited like crazy, and when he came to the Big Ten, Urban Meyer, he said the whole conference has to recruit better, right? When he came up from Florida. And he did. He threw out that gauntlet, and the rest of the Big Ten really didn't have the firepower to go try and do it. James Franklin's tried to do it, and they've got a pretty good class going this year right now. But Meyer took it to a different level, and he gave Ryan Day a great roster. And Ryan Day's recruiting well, but he's not recruiting like Meyer did. And that's why Ohio State football right now is a sell. They've been high. Now there's going to be some pressure on him. He lost 2 games this year. And the talent on the roster is not getting better. They might be able to.
You're not bringing those 3 receivers back. Those 3 receivers are gone. You're not bringing them back.
And he's not been recruiting like Meyer. And he made the mistake of hiring Coombs. It might have cost him a national championship this year. Kerry Coombs, nothing against him. He's a program guy. I got respect for him and everything. But he'd never been a coordinator before. He's at the end of his coaching career. He's in his 60s, and Ryan Day, who can hire anybody in the world, hires him to be the coordinator, and that's what cost him the Oregon game. It cost him the whole season.
Be there that much longer.
What?
Larry Johnson's long in the tooth. He's probably the best defensive line coach in the country the last 20 years.
Ohio State's a sell. Ohio State's a sell, and Penn State goes out and gives Franklin that contract. I know everybody was antsy about Franklin going to USC back when Penn State looked good in October. Well, they finished what's Penn State 7-5.
Yeah.
And they gave him that contract. Everybody's criticizing that, but what was she thinking, the AD? Because if Franklin wants to go, you let him walk. You don't give him a 10-year deal.
Jimmy Sexton runs the sport, though.
Yeah, but he doesn't run the athletic director at Penn State. I'm saying that's a mistake. And he's 7-5 this year. They go 7-5 again next year. The fans there are going to want to fire him, and he's going to have 9 years left on his deal. I don't know if he survives a 7-5 next year.
They're not going to.
What's that? They probably. But Penn State, they're recruiting really well right now. They were pretty good this year when they were beating Iowa, 17-3, whatever it was. When Clifford got injured, put Roberson in and couldn't protect the score. Iowa comes back and steals the win. And after that, Penn State kind of went downhill. I don't know how in the heck they lost to Illinois, but they did. By the way, Illinois went with 6-7 offensive linemen a few times. Michigan State dabbled with that last weekend. They brought Luke Campbell in with 6 offensive linemen a couple times to see what it looked like, and Penn State wasn't quite as susceptible to it on that day as they were against the Illini. But anyway, I thought Penn State was excellent around the second quarter of that Iowa game. I thought Penn State was excellent, and the wheels fell off. So, I mean, they've had some good moments. That defense was fast. It was good at times, but they could never run the ball this year, which I don't know how that's possible at Penn State. You got to be able to do everything.
Did you see the left tackle? Did you see number 70? Who was the guy, the backup, who looked like he was like 6'6"? He looked like Jeff Wittig. Remember Jeff Wittig?
Yeah.
6'8", 222 when he got to Michigan State. He's from somewhere in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
Like Forest Northern or something. But, I mean, did you see number 72 72 was the skinniest offensive tackle I've seen the whole year in the Big Ten. Go look at the guy. I mean, he couldn't even fill out his uniform.
So how does that happen as well as they've been recruiting? You got to check all the boxes, right? I think Penn State's a sell.
They don't pay attention.
Now Michigan had a good season this year, and they're going to think they've got it all straightened out. And to their credit, I mean,
those guys are old.
So, I mean, can Michigan keep it going? I don't know, but the timing is good to go into the SEC. I don't know how long Saban's going to keep doing it. I mean, maybe he'll still be doing it in 5 or 6 years. I don't know. Maybe he'll beat Georgia this weekend. I don't know. Alabama, they've got problems, but their defense is good. So, I mean, if they can get Georgia into a 14-10 type of game and make a play on special teams, nobody's expecting that. But if you're not wanting Michigan to win,
what team hasn't played a one-score game this year?
Alabama?
No,
they lost.
Who? Georgia.
Georgia had a one-score game against Clemson, the opener.
But Clemson, we realize, is not that good.
But that was like a 10-7 or what was it? A 10-3 game?
Yeah, 10-3. It was 10-3. My bad. Okay, but I'm just saying I don't think Georgia has played enough close games where if it gets to be 14-10, like what Alabama did last weekend to Auburn, they just stole that game.
Yeah, and that's wow. I mean, that's amazing that it went down like that. I've not watched that game. That's the problem with being a sports writer is I'm at the Michigan State game and I'm up all night covering that game. And kind of screws you up on Sunday a little bit. You get into Monday and Tuesday. Monday press conference. I was at MSU basketball practice last night. Michigan State versus Louisville on Wednesday coming up. On Saturday I don't get to watch games like everybody else does. I've got to try to catch up on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and try to skim through those. So I've not seen that Auburn game. I'm amazed that Auburn gave them that tough of a game. That's scary for Alabama. I mean, they've had a lot of games like that. Maybe not a lot of games, but they've had some tight games this year. And of course, Texas A&M beat them, but. I mean, if you're a Michigan hater, what you probably want to have happen is you want Alabama to beat Georgia because then Georgia will fall to number 2 or 3. They'll fall to 3, and then Michigan would play Georgia in the semifinals. And, Alabama might show that Georgia's beatable, but in order to, have the complete dream season, you have to go through Georgia and Alabama, which is not happening, right?
Nope.
Or you can be like you and think that Iowa's going to beat them, which could happen. I mean, Michigan had better not play their D game and better not leave the football on the carpet more than 1 or 2 times. But they slayed the dragon, and that's very difficult to come back from. And they're playing a team that's going to be very happy to be there, and it's going to be their Super Bowl. And it's hard to run the ball against Iowa. And some teams can throw the ball a little bit against Iowa, but most teams cannot. And many teams throw interceptions against Iowa.
Okay, let me ask you
what?
something.
And this football season, Nils, this football season has been a great football season. Just unexpected
One of the
things.
best ever.
Hey, unexpected things have happened every single week. And it would be fitting this year if this weekend Alabama beats Georgia and Iowa beats Michigan. I'm just saying that.
Hey, was it 84-85 when Harbaugh broke his arm against Michigan State?
84.
Okay, who was on that defense in 84?
Morrissey. Parker.
No,
Phil Parker.
better.
Phil Parker.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I'm saying. 1907. I'm just telling you. Phil Parker is going to do something crazy from Lorain, Ohio, 2-time All-Big Ten, graduate assistant for Nick Saban. I'm telling you.
Oh, he's going to want this
I
game.
was winning that game.
Right. If Iowa wins
Phil
and
Parker's
Alabama
like
wins.
pick quick, dude.
If Alabama beats Georgia and Iowa beats Michigan, then your 4 playoff teams are number 1 Alabama, number 2 Georgia, number 3 Cincinnati, number 4 Oklahoma State. And you'll have an Alabama-Georgia rematch in the title game.
And then Nick Saban is still the guy.
All right. What about MSU basketball? What did you think? I thought
I like it. It's a bye. I like Jaden Akins, he's Shannon Brown, Maurice Ager, Kelvin Torbert. I mean, did you see the offensive rebounding?
Yeah.
The dude, by the end of the year,
42-inch vertical. 42-inch vertical on him. He told us in practice last night.
He's like me, you, and Matt Dorsey times 3.
Yeah, he's pretty good. And like we had Conan Dyke on earlier, and he's the defensive stopper of the future. Akins is. I don't know if he can be a stopper this year. He'll put in good 15 minutes of defense per game. But I think that's the thing I want to see in Michigan State. Can they develop somebody like this guy for Louisville? By the time people watch this podcast, the Michigan State-Louisville game will be already been played for most people. But they've got this guy number 0, Teague, played for Florida, good catch and shoot guy at about 6'3". When you face a really good guy like Ivy of Purdue or this guy Teague for Michigan State, who do you put on him? Do you put Christie on him? Gabe Brown at 6'8", good vertical athlete, but does not move his feet well horizontally. Who's your defensive stopper in the backcourt for Michigan State? Is that a weakness that they're never going to be able to fix this year?
No, Akins is the guy. He did it.
How many? He can be the guy, and he will be the guy in the future. But how many minutes a game do you give him?
I give him about 22 a game.
So, at the wing, so how many minutes do you give to Gabe Brown?
About 22. You take the minutes away from Hauser. That's where the minutes are going to come from.
But he's Hauser's a 4. We need some.
I'm talking about how you're going to play though. You can play Akins and Brown on the same team.
And put Brown at the 4?
Yeah.
Well, Malik Hall.
He's a mismatch.
How many minutes do you want Christie to play? 22?
I would think, all those guys need to play about 22 to 24 minutes. Everything's right.
All right. If Brown plays 20, I think Brown's got to play like 27 or so, or 25. And if you're saying if they get play 22, 22, 22 with Christie, Brown, and we got Akins. Who comes off the bench of the 2? You got Akins is your first wing off the bench. You got 80 minutes there. I guess they could each play about 20. But I don't know if you finish games with Akins. I don't know. Maybe Akins does become the guy. Does Brown sit in some situations? Christie sit because you need the defense from Akins? I don't know. But,
do you sit guys out? That's what you're going to have to do, right?
Christie can play some defense, but they're going to need somebody. Otherwise, you're going to have that problem where a guy's just going to get hot and you're not going to be able to stop him. Like Ivy or something like that. That's where Aaron Henry, you miss him a little bit.
Ivy's the best player in the Big Ten, so it doesn't matter. After watching him tonight, he's by far the best player in the Big Ten. Because Purdue's never had anybody that fast, ever.
Really?
Somebody tried to tell me, one of my buddies tried to tell me Woody Austin. Like, Woody Austin was never that fast. That Ivy kid, and I was giving my buddy Todd Hensley, who a hard time. I'm like, how did you guys not do better with that team with First and him? He goes, well, we only had 8 guys, and we played those guys too much. I go, yeah, Ivy's as good as anybody. I go, you guys should have been a lot better that year.
All right.
Nils, played for speed.
All right, Nils, appreciate it, man. It's 1 a.m. I got to get done with this thing. Appreciate everybody that's been watching us. Nils, I'll talk to you later. Thanks for all your contributions and your insights.
I don't know how much there was. I apologize for my bad language.
Dude, you're perfect. All right, thanks a lot, Nils. Hey, I want to say thanks to everybody that's joined in. We're not going to be able to get to all the questions because it's 1 a.m. now. We've been going for 3 hours, having fun doing it. As you can see, we've got a problem. We've got an addiction to talking about Michigan State sports and pontificating about things. You can't do this on the radio because no one would ever buy advertising for it. But here at Spartan Mag Live, Spartan Mag YouTube channel, we do it that way. We don't make any apologies. We're different. We'll go long-winded. We bring people on like Conan Dyke and Ron Armstrong and Nils Deco. I have him on because he knows his stuff. You can tell that his frame of reference goes back, deep into the 70s, basketball and football, and he played the game at a pretty good level back in the day. And you can tell he's entertaining, and he's got a media background. He had a talk show in Austin for a while. He's a good one. He's a dandy. So that's why we bring him on. Sometimes he and I just talk, and I saw that it looked like we weren't losing many viewers, so I just let it roll. Anyway, I'm not going to be able to get to all the comments and questions over here in the comments and reactions area. I apologize about that, but it's going late, and we got to shut it down. I do want to, now that football season's over, we do want to get something going with some recruiting heading into signing day. Anyway, I appreciate everybody that watched Spartan Mag Live tonight. Go over to SpartanMag.com. Give us a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for hanging with us this long. I know we still have a lot of people watching right now. I appreciate every one of you guys and gals. And thanks to the support we had. And go over to SpartanMag.com for continuing coverage throughout the week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot.